Hey, how you doing? This is John, and welcome to John's Longbox. I'm here with legendary comic book, I almost said artist, writer Chuck Dixon. Yeah, you drew a couple of comics, so I could call
Yeah,
you.
couple here and there.
Right. So how you doing, Chuck? It's been a long time. You're one of my favorite guests, man. Last time you were on my channel, we were laughing, my eyes were watering. A lot of fun.
No, we had fun. We had fun. No,
Yeah.
I'm good. I'm good. I'm busy. Got a lot of work, a lot of opportunities. People keep asking me to write stuff, so I keep writing it.
Yeah, it's funny because you said last time we talked that you were that little kid in class that when the teacher would be like, "All right, we got a 1,000-word report to do over Christmas vacation," you went home and you did it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I just saw in Charlie Brown, he's agonizing all summer over what to do. I was Charlie Brown. I guess you were Peppermint Patty or whatever, But
yeah.
I'm like all summer long. I can't enjoy summer because I got homework, but I can't do the homework because I have to procrastinate. So
I wasn't that kid on New Year's Day writing the essay. No.
So that's how you do your comic scripts, right? I a few times I heard. Anyway, for people who don't know Chuck Dixon is one of the most prolific comic book writers of all time. No joke. I've been reading your comics since Airboy #1. I picked that up off the spinner rack,
Cool.
in a comic book. So and you has said on Wednesdays you do Ask Chuck Dixon on YouTube. I love that, or as I call it, the $20 show, because you always bring out. So I literally have a stack over here of Tex Ritter, of Blue Coats, Uncle Scrooge. You recommend this. You didn't recommend this, but I bought this because you were talking about pulp. I kind of agree with it. It's kind of, but I felt like as a comic book guy, I got to read the pulp. But anyway,
so you can say you read it. So.
Yeah, I could say I read it. It's slow going though. But you mentioned that you always worked ahead of your scripts. Like you were like 6 issues, and then you were like, well, what else you got for me? And
right.
I'm just wondering, like, I see a lot of comic books being late these days. What is your secret? What are you just born disciplined? Did you train yourself? How do you? Because I would like to know.
Well, I think the bottom line is just love it. I like doing it, writing comics is kind of in my DNA. It just comes naturally to me. From a childhood spent studying pages of comic books.
Yeah.
And just learning the language, the language of comics, learning the medium. I love it when you give me the opportunity. I worked a lot of years trying to get into business. And so once I got in, I was going to just work my butt off. I remember Charles Schultz was interviewed one time and they said, you've got all this money. The guy was a billionaire,
right,
off of Peanuts and Charlie Brown. And, they said, why don't you travel more? Why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? And he goes, I worked so long to do what I'm doing now, to do what I love, that this is all I want to do. So he just stayed in California at his studio and just worked. And I feel the same way. I love doing this.
Another thing I enjoyed listening to your Ask Chuck. I tried it every time I have a comic book question. I'm like, I'm going to go ask Chuck Dixon. It's a great resource. So, one of the things that you said that always struck me is you didn't like to have exclusive deals with Marvel or DC because you did all your work in 1 month, and he goes, and now what? For 10 months, I got to sit here and do nothing. So
I would sign I signed an exclusive with DC one time, and I signed it in October, and by April, I had run through the guaranteed amount. And I said, okay, what do I do now? So they just started giving me stuff, to keep me busy.
Oh, okay. So it's still, you can't work for Marvel. You can't work for.
No. I had met my commitment to them, but I was still exclusive, so I was writing what they called special projects comics. I was writing like Superman meets NASCAR racers, and stuff like that. I did a story for Six Flags Great Adventures map book, so they just try, and then a bunch of 80-page giants. They started throwing 80-page giants at me. So, so I could keep going, keep busy. Otherwise I'd go crazy.
Marcus installs cable. He's always driving up and down just north of you, North Carolina and South Carolina. He says it's great for long drives at work. Yeah, I have an hour commute to work, and Wednesday, I look forward to that. 6 o'clock in the morning, I get in. You already released it, and I just listen to it. It's so good. It's a lot of fun.
So many people say that I've added "Keep Your Eyes on the Road" to my introduction at the beginning of them.
Yeah, well, yeah. Have you met me? I crashed in July and broke my neck. So yeah, low blood sugar and driving is not a good combination.
Oh no, that's not good. Yeah.
It's fun. I take the train every day, and then one day I decided to drive. Yeah. So there you go. A lot of fun. So let's talk. You got a lot of projects. Geez, the elephant in the room. You got a movie coming out.
Yeah, March 28th.
Yeah. How cool is that? You said you came this close like so many times, but now it's actually happening.
Yeah, I mean, it's a wonder movies ever get made. The process is so long. I mean, this is like 10 years, and it's finally going to the big screen. So yeah, it's cool. I mean, I don't get that excited about the Hollywood end of it. I've dealt enough with the movie business. You kind of turn your heart to stone. But the money's good.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know what we're talking about, you have a movie called A Working Man.
Right.
Is named the movie, and it's based on Levon's Trade, the first of your Levon Cade novels. Did I say that correctly? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Any reason why they changed the title?
I have no idea.
And you have no control over that, right?
No. Once you sign away the movie rights, they can do whatever they want. They could have made a musical. They could have made Levon, Loretta. There's really nothing I can do about it. But the important thing is for you folks who might be signing a movie deal is don't give them everything, because they always want everything. They wanted audio rights, they wanted comic book rights. I said, no, you're getting the movie rights. You're making a movie, that's all you get.
Oh, really? So they can only make a movie. That's good, because now in the comic book people want to. So yeah, there you go. I didn't even think of that. So many people.
I'm working on a Levon's Trade, a graphic novel now. So.
Is it too soon to mention like a publisher or crowdfunded or anything?
Yeah, it's a little too soon. We are going to crowdfund it.
Okay.
So it's going to be a big push.
Brings to the next thing, everybody's talking comic books. Is this the death of direct market now with Diamond going down? I never thought of it until listening to you when you said that direct market was the first nail in the coffin of comics.
Yes.
And being I worked in comic book stores. I love comic. At first, I'm like, no, Chuck is wrong. But I went back and started looking at new sales, and I talked to other creators, and they all agree with you. That shows. Is this the second nail now?
Yeah, well, I'm not blaming the comic shops, and it wasn't the comic shops; it was the comic companies who decided to put all their eggs in one basket and just concentrate on direct sales to the comic shops. And it wasn't the comic shops owners' fault.
No.
And so by doing that, they abandoned the newsstand. They pulled so much of their content off the newsstand. They stopped thinking about the newsstand. And I knew from my royalty statements, that's where the money was. That's where all the readers were.
Oh,
all the casual readers, because, everybody who read comics wasn't a comic book fan. They just read them casually. Everybody who buys People magazine doesn't put them in bags and board them, and keep them forever. So when they did that, it cut down on my royalties and everybody else's royalties dramatically. And we didn't have an entry-level market anymore. There was no way for kids to see comics.
See, I'm 56 years old. I'm not going to guess your age or anything, but I'll put us in the same bracket. But I'm sure me and you got our first comics on a newsstand.
Oh, absolutely. At the drugstore.
Yeah, and everybody, even I'd say even like 10 years younger than me, they got hooked by the, you're hanging on to your mom's skirt, and there's a comic book right there at the supermarket. There's a comic book at dentist's office. I remember going to get my hair cut, and the barber had a spin rack, and he gave me a Battlestar Galactica comic that made me a fan of Walt Simonson to this day. You know what I mean? And then, like you said, nobody wakes up and says, you know what, I'm going to get into this really niche hobby. I'm going to go see if there's nobody. I'm sure there's a cool hobby that I never known about. I'm not going to know about it and go to a store to find out more. I need to be exposed to it. So I'm 180 degrees with my thinking. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, I mean, nobody says, I think I'll start collecting model trains today, or I think I'll start fly fishing this weekend. I mean, you got to be exposed to it first and then decide whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
And it really hurt. It really hurt. And every creator saw it coming. The comic book companies didn't seem to see it coming. And then as the distributors shrunk down to one, it was like, wow, we're really in a bind now.
So why would Marvel and DC encourage this? Like, don't you think they're like, whoa, they want to sell as much comics? I mean, you look at them today, they probably don't, but back then they wanted to.
I don't think they were as forward looking. So much of their concentration was on superheroes, but so much of the sales on the newsstand wasn't superheroes. War comics, Western comics, Savage Sword of Conan. I mean, I was getting $3,000 a month in royalties off of Savage Sword.
Oh,
and this was in the early 80s.
Oh my God.
That was a great pay, more money than I'd ever made in my life. And that was the royalties. And plus I was getting paid to write it.
Yeah.
So, and when they pulled away from the newsstand, they took all those magazines with them. And they were trying to sell Savage Sword into the comic shops that didn't want it. I mean, we were doing 175, 200,000 sales on the newsstand with Savage Sword. And the comic shops were doing about 30,000. Why would you abandon that market? But it's inexplicable to me. I don't understand it. It's so nearsighted. You've heard me on Ask Dixon talk over and over again how in the early 2000s, when the Harry Potter thing hit, that this was a time to go after young adult readers.
Yeah.
And Marvel and DC rejected it. They didn't want to go after young adult readers. They said, that's not our audience. Well, yeah, it's not your audience now because you skipped a generation of comic readers by abandoning the newsstand. Here's your chance to get them back. And every opportunity they had to move into that market, they refused to move into it.
Just a couple of baffling decisions. DC had a character called Tim Hunter that preceded Harry Potter, but it was the same thing. He was a little kid, glasses. He even had a scar. He had a pet owl. He was a boy wizard.
Right.
And when the movies came out, they actively distanced that character from Harry Potter. They aged him up, added some sex and drugs into his comic. And I was like, what are you guys doing? You couldn't have been sued. You guys were first.
Well, they couldn't have been sued because they were owned by Warner's that had the Harry Potter franchise.
There you go. I didn't even think of that. But you're absolutely right. They embrace it. Get people, because Rowling doesn't like comics. She never made Harry Potter comics, but we could have had Tim Hunter, the second best thing,
Yeah, or just any of the other raft of DC characters that would have been appealing to young adult readers.
Right.
But they just no interest. They actively said that's not our audience. It's like every audience should be your audience. So it should be comics for everybody.
Who is the audience? A picture of the planet Earth. Do you live here? You're my audience. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh my God. I'll never understand. And now they actively chased away jerks like me who was spending $400 a month on comic books,
They ended up chasing away their core audience. The people they thought were their audience, they ended up, turning them off.
Like I said, there's nothing wrong. Like, oh, geez, we could get more people. That's fine.
Right.
Make the hamburgers the way the hamburgers are, and then try some shrimp too. But don't do anything with the hamburgers.
Right.
I don't.
Yeah, I mean, the last effort they made to reach a new audience was Vertigo, and that was successful.
Yeah.
And that was great. I didn't care for any of their comics, but it was a great business model, and it was successful.
Yeah, you never had a Vertigo comic. Yeah.
Nah, I was not a good fit.
You weren't a pretentious bebop.
No, I wasn't a pretentious. I didn't vote for the right people. I was not. I was not nihilistic enough to work at Vertigo.
In the 90s, I ate everything Vertigo put out.
I'm not arguing that it was quality stuff. It just wasn't for me. It didn't appeal to me. I have nothing against Vertigo. In fact, I like what Karen Berger did because she actively went after a different audience than the normal superhero and was successful at it. I mean, I have all the respect in the world.
And she had an eye for talent.
Well, absolutely, absolutely.
And like you said, and she didn't mess with DC in general. You still got your Batman, still got your Superman. You know what I mean?
Yeah. They weren't trying to mix it too. They weren't, they were comics for, they were more adult in nature, which was fine because it wasn't the standard DC characters. I hate it when they take DC and Marvel characters and try to make them, adult material, because it's like, no,
Yeah.
this is now we're getting into weirdness. Guys
Yeah.
running around in spandex and capes. Yeah, it gets fetishistic. It disturbs
Yeah.
me.
Yeah. I mean, I know you're not a fan of the Watchmen, right? That.
Well, I mean, I appreciate that it was good. I enjoyed it when I read it until the end. The end's awful, but and it was a great experiment. I mean, obviously, two master craftsmen working on it. Just not a big fan of it.
Yeah, you're right. Even when it came out, I was like, I don't like that ending. I never liked the ending. Something bothered me, but it was blasphemy. Or Tony Grigo, or a friend from Albuquerque, says, "Are your Airboy stories going to be collected in an omnibus?"
Well, we're going to see. IDW currently holds the publishing rights to it, but IDW is kind of going the way of the dinosaurs. When that happens, the rights will be freed up for me. I already have plans to do restorations of the comics that are better than the ones IDW published. I have a guy that can make them look better than they've ever looked before. So yeah, absolutely, we'll be doing it.
Oh, there you go. So we're rooting for IDW to
well, it's sad, but I don't know anybody there anymore, so I don't care.
Well, I don't know any comics that come out by them anymore. Does anything?
Yeah. What do they do? I don't know. So
yeah. Oh man, I'm like, the first time you came on, I just stared at the camera like Cindy Brady when she was on that game show. I was all starstruck. But it's good to talk. We were talking before we went live that Chuck lost 20 pounds. I gained 20 pounds. So don't worry, the Earth's balance has been maintained.
Oh yeah, it's fine. We're good. We're still spinning on the axis at the proper speed. So we're calibrating it. John and I are calibrating it for you.
Yeah, I'm in. It was funny because one day I was just like, I'm fat. Oh, Chuck Dixon lost more weight again. Damn it. There you go. I don't know. Chuck's got that Hollywood money, but I don't think IDW's worth buying.
No, I don't see anything there I want. So
yeah, what do you get from? Because IDW is all licensed product anyway. Just you could get all the other stuff, right?
Yeah. They don't. They haven't had any independently produced stuff of their own.
It's a shame.
They don't have any IP. I mean, they had 30 Days a Night.
Yeah, that put it on.
But even that was licensed because it was creator owned. So
at least Graham got the rights back to Girls from Dimension 13 from Aftershock. Yeah. Oh, speaking of Graham, one of the things you mentioned was Joker, Devil's Advocate.
Yeah.
And I went on eBay before everybody else, and I got myself a nice hardcover edition. That was excellent. That was
that's a career highlight, even though it didn't sell well. Graham and I are so damn proud of it.
But you know what? I'm a big. You're hard pressed to find a bigger comic book fan than me, and I didn't know about it.
Yeah, seriously, that was the problem. I mean, they promoted it. We said, market it. It's a special event. It's a big Joker story. Joker's popular. It's an important story because it addresses an important issue between Batman and Joker that's really never been fully addressed before. And they marketed it like, those guys doing detective. Well, they did this too. And that was it. They did house ads, and there was no promo or push or anything else. That was a problem at DC, that they saw Dark Knight Rises and The Watchmen as like the milestones that could never be bested. This is the best we can do, and nobody's ever going to be able to do anything better than them. And it's like, wow, that's a great attitude. Our best days are behind us.
Right.
And that's the way they would look at everything.
Can you imagine if you did that to your boss? Well, I'm never going to get better, Mr. Dixon.
Yeah.
Thanks for hiring me, but last year was the best work you're ever going to get out of me.
Yeah, I'm just phoning it in from now on.
Yeah,
you're lucky I showed up.
Yeah, I mean, it in a normal market, it should be, we have to now top The Watchmen. We have to top Dark Knight Returns.
Which they certainly could. I mean, when The Nail came out, I thought that was a terrific piece of work, and they did very little to promote that. Yeah. The Golden Age, that was another great. That was
I forgot about
terrific, and they didn't really do anything with it because it's like, well, it's just not as good as those other books. No, yeah, it's every bit as good as those other books.
Yeah, absolutely right. Yeah,
Dale. I mean, I think the only, Darwin Cook should have been the answer man at DC. I mean, he was a tremendous talent He knew marketing. His work was terrific. Fans liked it, and they pushed it somewhat, but not enough.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah,
And they didn't listen to him the way they listened to Alan Moore and the way they listened to Frank Miller, as far as the direction we should go in now.
Yeah, I'm still Alan Moore's last defender. I love his work. I never met the man. I probably don't want to meet the man because I'll never meet your idols. Not everybody's a nice guy like you, fun to talk to. But I wouldn't take advice on culture from Alan Moore. That like the guy's just seems like he hates everything. So
I think Alan Moore is a tremendous talent. I mean, he's incredible. And he did have he had a positive influence on comics and a negative.
Yes.
He showed that you could do groundbreaking storytelling, but he also introduced these dark and dismal elements that way too many writers glommed onto.
To his credit, he said, "I don't understand why people still revere the what's that Joker book? The Killing Joke." He goes, "It's just a Batman." He goes, "It was supposed to be a Batman annual." I didn't like that. I didn't like the art was phenomenal, but I didn't particularly care. But he revered Superman, like everything that he did. And then when he did Supreme for Image, he basically told Superman stories that DC was not going to do anymore, like classic Silver Age stuff. So I agree with you. I loved comics, but he kind of got the shaft. So I can understand being a little bitter. This comment just made me laugh. John may have gained weight, Chuck lost weight, but Graham just gets more muscles. Yeah.
Well, since Graham got exposed to gamma radiation, his life has changed.
Yeah. Dale wants to know, what do you think would it take to bring back romance or war comics?
I think just get them out onto the newsstand for one. Get them back in the PXs. PXs used to sell a whole lot of comic books. I don't think they sell them anymore. I do a regular series of Medal of Honor comics for the Association for the United States Army, and I think I'm done like 30 of them, and they're only available at their convention, and they're available free online. You can look for them online. You can read them digitally, but they do really well at these conventions. People are just crazy for them, and I get asked for copies all the time. So war comics, could do well. Romance as well, westerns as well. They do well overseas. These genres still sell overseas. Why wouldn't they sell here?
I absolutely agree with you. All my military friends, they are huge nerdy guys. They like their Dungeons and Dragons. They like their comic books. These guys all know their manga stuff now. And like you said it in one of your Chuck Dixons that when the military during World War II, the military was all over the world. They were all reading their comics, leaving their comics, like the Philippines. Geez, 10 years after World War II, there was comic creators that I didn't even realize they were from the Philippines. Like Pablo Marcos, I thought was Spanish or Mexican. You know what I mean?
No, yeah.
So
because I remember in the 70s when all the Filipino artists came over, and they're all living in New Jersey, and you used to be able to go to these little New Jersey cons, and there'd be 20 guys there doing convention sketches, doing this awesome stuff.
I was playing a game in my head. I didn't want to mention it, but I was thinking, how long before people talk about Robin? People love your Robin series. That seems to be a fan favorite. Whenever your name gets mentioned, people bring up your Tim Drake Robin. Do you hold that in as high regard as your fans, or is it just?
Yeah. It was a lot of fun, and it was it was a weighty task DC gave me because they really wanted Tim Drake to be popular. They wanted him to succeed where the other guy had failed. Jason Todd had failed. So, there was a lot of, they didn't put pressure on me, but they were just like, it's real important this sell, and I remember them.
They didn't put pressure at you, but one guy had his hand on the exit door.
Yeah. Well, basically, they, in no uncertain terms said, we want to sell at least 175,000 copies, the first issue of the first miniseries. And because they had done a Catwoman thing, and that's what that had sold. And so we blew the doors off that. We went back to press like 4 times, that and then the second miniseries put even that in the shade. We went back over and over again to press on the second miniseries. So, I guess I did my job.
So, because I liked Tim Drake, but I didn't like what's his name, Jason Todd. What was
No,
it?
nobody did.
Yeah, why was he so unlikable?
Well, Denny O'Neil, he said that, sometimes characters get away from you, and the thinking was they would create like the anti-Dick Grayson, that this kid would have more of a mind of his own and rebel against Batman, and not always follow orders. And turned out the readers really didn't like that at all. Why would you not do what Batman told you to do? I mean,
Yeah.
And readers couldn't relate to a guy who basically, he meets Batman because he's taking the hubcaps off of cars.
Yeah.
He's a juvenile delinquent. Plus, even back then, it seemed kind of cringe that your idea of a juvenile delinquent is a guy who takes hubcaps off cars.
Yeah, I know. Like, when was the last time anybody stole a car radio?
When's the last time a car had a hubcap? It just didn't work. I mean, I didn't like the character, and then they tried to reboot him, and basically just fell into the same trap. He just went down the same rabbit hole of just being an obnoxious little brat.
This comment laugh. I spent $5 to get rid of Jason Todd. I remember that at the time. For anybody who's watching this doesn't know what we're talking about, they'd set up a telephone line and you could vote 1-800 number. Back then, that was like all of the rage. 1-800 number. Saturday Night Live did it with Larry the Lobster. Should we kill Larry the Lobster? Should we let Larry? They did say, should they get rid of and overwhelmingly people said kill Jason Todd. And of course, people in the news crew said Robin was dying, and other people got upset because they thought they don't know comics anymore. They think Dick Grayson was dying, and people were pissed. But as a kid, I was like, they're using me. Like, that was the very first time I realized I was not exploited, but I was being like manipulated for publicity stunt.
Right.
And I refused to vote. And I even refused to buy that Death in the Family comic book, which is a big deal to an anal retentive comic book fan.
I know.
I bought it back issues. I was like, I'll buy it when it's in the back issue so they won't make money off of me. That's how I justified it.
You're a diehard like me. Like, I quit buying Marvel comics when Steve Ditko left Spider-Man.
Yeah.
I just had the sense that that Steve Ditko had been screwed over somehow. Of course, I was right. But how did I know that as a 10-year-old? But I just had that idea. I was like, I'm not buying from these. They're not getting another cent out of me because they screwed my man, Steve Ditko.
Yeah. Here's another thing that you said that's become part of my daily lexicon is kids are smart.
Yeah.
Like you keep saying for children's books, you can't just write drivel,
Oh, no.
Yeah. For those of you who don't know, Chuck you have an extensive list of children's books that you wrote, right?
Yeah, I've written a few. I mean, and kids are the toughest audience because they'll tell you if something sucks. They'll lose interest. They'll start fidgeting. They'll wander out of the room. You got to grab them and hold on to them. Yeah.
So I who was I just saying this to on a talk? I was just like, kids aren't dumb. They know what they like. They'll reject bad cartoons on Saturday morning. I don't like that show.
Right.
Maybe they can't articulate it, but they know it's not good. Brutally honest, man. When I was a school teacher, kids would tell me I'm fat. Maybe if you shaved your beard, you'd get a girlfriend. They weren't being mean. They weren't being mean.
They horrible.
Just knew the truth. Yeah. Somebody said he took wheels off the back and then came back for more. That's how Jason said he wasn't even a good criminal. Yeah. Could you have made him likable? Master Hobo wants to know. Is that even beyond Chuck Dixon's abilities?
If there was an arc to the character where something happened to him where he got humbled and realized that he had to start, I was wrong. Every decision I've made in my life has been horrible. And now I get taken in by a billionaire and I'm still screwing up,
Right.
So maybe if he really got his ass kicked instead of killed. And he, finally say, look.
Or worse, he defies an order and Batman gets hurt, or a civilian.
Oh,
gets hurt.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's a good one.
I did think that when it first came, I said maybe they're setting up some sort of redemption arc, which I'm a sucker for. I love a good redemption arc. I don't like it when the heroes just descend into badness, and then that's the new norm. I don't, like it works for the Punisher, but not for Batman's sidekick. No, and. Another one of your terms, a lot of your terms become part of my life because I'm a comic book idiot. But one of the things that you keep saying is the illusion of change. Do you want to talk about that? I was going to go on for 20 minutes, but I realize it's you're the guest.
Well, yeah, losing the change is something. It's a term I first heard Mike Carlin use when they were doing the Death of Superman thing, and he said it wasn't his term, but I forget who he credited it to. But comics, because they're around forever and ever and ever, there's a limit to what you can do. I mean, you can kill Superman, but you got to bring him back. You can break Batman's back, but you got to bring him back. Spider-Man can quit being Spider-Man, but eventually he's got to come back. So you do this story where, it's all dramatic and super. There's all these high points and, misery and ups and downs. But in the end, you're back to the status quo because it's a comic book. And that's the illusion of change. Soap operas do it all the time.
Right. Yeah. Who said you bend it, but you don't break it?
Right.
And I do think, around I told you this before, but in 2015 I quit Marvel and DC cold turkey, and for a lifelong comic book person, I know people are going to laugh at me, make fun of me, but it is what it is. It was like an emotionally damaging event. Just imagine you love fishing, and you just like, I'm not fishing anymore, and you look around and you still got all these fishing poles around. You know what I mean? I still have, and I was almost done with comics, and I found out about crowdfunding comics, and I got really excited again, and here I am. But DC irreversibly broke, and Marvel irreversibly broke, and I've come to the conclusion that I was a fan of continuity. Like I love that Spider-Man. The Spider-Man of 2010 was the same Spider-Man of Ditko. Just the creators changed, but all the editors of Marvel, the only big change was that one more day. But the less I talk about that, the better. But it was basically the same. And the Fantastic Four and the Atlantis was this Atlantis. And then I started to notice that they didn't pay attention to continuity anymore, like little things. And then those little things, I was like, this isn't Stan Lee's Marvel Universe anymore. I love this little Lego. This guy, Chuck Dixon, added this. Mike Baron added that. And you added. But nobody ever took away these Lego pieces and rebuilt it over here. DC rebooted. And that's why I never got into DC as much as Marvel.
Yeah, we were interested in playing in the playground and playing with these characters we loved. But we weren't, like you said, we were going to bend them, not break them. And we were going to explore things about them. I mean, I love looking at the logistics of Batman. How does this actually work? How did this happen? How that happen? And I can explain it in a way that doesn't take anything away from it. It actually makes it seem richer and more believable and more grounded in reality. And you mentioned Mike Baron. What Mike Baron did for the Flash in the short time he was on the Flash was fantastic.
Yes,
he asked all the questions nobody asked, like. This guy's metabolism, he's got to be eating all the time.
I love that. That was
how many pairs of shoes does this guy go through? And he's dealing with heat and friction. And Mike thought of all these things that all the years I've been reading Flash never entered my mind. And it made it a richer, deeper reading experience. And it didn't take anything away from it. It was still a superhero with fantastic powers and all the rest of it. But now it's seems even more interesting.
Right. Dr. Mess says continuity is hard. They don't want to put in that kind of work. That's why they came up with the multiverse. I think that was the most success. I hate the multiverse. To me, it's just cop out.
But they used to have continuity cops at both companies. Who would say, no, this is wrong, that's wrong. But the last time I worked at DC, I was in the offices and they assigned me Batman and the Outsiders, and the team had already been put in place. And I'm like, well, I don't know who some of these characters are because some of them were created after I left. So they said, well, so-and-so, he's the continuity guy. Go down and talk to him. So I go into this guy's office. He's in there playing with his iPod. That's how long ago it was. He's in there playing with his iPod. And I said, I need to know about this character, and that character. And he goes, oh, okay, well, and he's got a row of who's above his desk. Well, let's pull that down and see. And I'm like, I could have done that. And I said, and also I know these characters aren't in the who's who.
Right, yeah.
If they're in the who's who, I would know about them already, but they're new. And this guy didn't know. Had no.
Oh, this story went completely I thought this old guy this wizard was going to tell you who created it and everything.
No, he was. This was not a comic book guy. This was a new hire. Now the old continuity copy was the DC librarian, Peter Sanderson. He could answer any question. You know, he could tell you how many buttons Woozy Wooks had in his shirt. You know, it's crazy.
Talk about a dream job. Get paid to memorize all the comic books. Man, I
And
was
sit in a room full of comics. DC's library probably doesn't even exist anymore. DC's library went all the way back to the Golden Age, and they were all hardcover. So you could read like original Golden Age DC comics bound in hardcover.
Yeah, my continuity story is as you know, I'm an electrician, and at one point in my life, I was the electrician for Marvel Comics. I've told the story a few times, but I guess it's worth telling again. And I was told to go in there. One of the outlets kept blowing out, so they type it, and I'm like, so I go in there. First off, they have an outlet, but they have a plug in it and another plug in it, and so they can put 16 plugs in one.
That's so marvelous.
And there's 16 people jammed in a space that you and I would have been uncomfortable if we had it on ourselves. So I was like, so I have to get everybody to move their desk. I'm laying on the floor. I'm taking, you know, so I'm like, we got to run another outlet here. You know, I can't fix this, you know. So I'm like, okay, so I got to run. So long story short, I put a ladder in the middle of this room. And while I'm up there looking for the splice box, they all huddle around and they're having a meeting about what could be the next Marvel event. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to pretend to be in this box for a long time. I'm listening to it. And they were talking about when the Inhumans debuted in the Avengers comics, this happened and this, and I'm like, the Inhumans debuted in the Fantastic Four. These were the writers and editors for Marvel Comics trying to come up with an event, and they had their continuity wrong. And that had I known that the shop that I was working for would have went out of business 8 months later, I would have done this. But I wanted to turn into Woody Allen in Annie Hall, because I happen to have Marshall McLuhan over here. Like, I just wanted to get down the ladder and be like, you know, the Inhumans debuted in Fantastic Four. It was Jack Kirby, you know, right before the Galactus stories. It was in the 50s. I don't remember the exact number, but it was in the late 50s of the issues of Fantastic Four. They debuted over here. You have no business being a Marvel editor. I don't know why you're writing, you know, it just, you know, right, wow. Marshall McLuhan, right, and then get back on the ladder, and then I would have gotten a phone call that I was fired, but it would have been so satisfying.
You would have been fired, and your boss wouldn't even really understood why he was firing you.
What did this guy do? And I remember I was, you know, snaking through the tunnel. So I was literally walking on people's desks, and I'm trying to remember who it was. But one of the guys, he was an old timer. Was it Archie Goodwin? I forget, because I was trying not to stare at everybody, and I'm walking across their desk, and I go, "How is it like working over here?" And he goes, "Not like it used to be." And I don't. Have you ever read the book, The Adventures of Cavalier and Clay?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Do you remember the scene when they're talking about the Magicians Club? They were dreaming about going into the Magicians Club, right. And then when they finally went in, there was old guys arguing about who pays the bill, and they were
right.
That's what it was like. I wanted to go to Marvel Comics. I thought it was going to be like, you know, acting out, like jumping on the desk, acting out bored, and then somebody else acting out the Hulk. Instead, it was miserable people. It smelled like mildew. The lights were flickering. People's outlets were sparking because they had 16 plug. I was like, oh man!
It was a sweatshop. That bullpen was a sweatshop.
What year was this? This was I don't remember the exact year, but it was 2010. I'm going to say.
Oh wow, it was all over long before that.
Yeah. I do remember walking in, and I was nervous, and I had my pass, and I was all proud of myself, and they had a beautiful receptionist, and they had this fish tank, and I'm like, this is going to be so great. Little did I know that was all the showpiece. Once you got past the fish tank, it was like miserable.
Yeah, that was, you know, the tourists had arrived by then to take over the company.
Yeah, so I don't know, was it Archie Goodwin?
No, it was not definitely. Archie was.
Yeah, he was long gone. I forget who it was, but it was a name I would recognize. I gotta look through all the old, but it was an old timer. And
I think Ralph Macchio was still around at that point.
And I remember Joe Quesada was in his office that looked beautiful, and I had to go in there and be like, "This is all your fault, by the way," and then just you know. But you know, I just got married, and it's not a good idea to get fired when you've been married.
No. Marvel didn't. Yeah, they didn't take well to, you know, because I know several people that got fired for just saying the wrong thing.
Yeah, I would have gotten a call. And it's funny because they were all waiting for a call from Marvel. It was understood that I was going. You know what I
Wow.
mean? Like, John's going. John's got to go to Marvel. John's got to go to, and then I go, and then I insult everybody. They would have been like, yeah. And then I stupidly, after work, I went down to the DC offices, and I go in. There's a receptionist, and there's that Clark Kent thing sitting in the chair, and I show him
Yeah.
that I'm an electrician. And can I come in for a tour? And the woman behind the counter goes, "No." I thought, like, oh, I'm an electrician. They're gonna let me in. Like, they don't care.
No.
I just went home.
Yeah, you weren't getting in. You weren't
No.
getting past that Superman.
Yeah. I don't know. I tried. But never meet you. That's why I get nervous when I have a big name on my channel, because, like, you were a lot of fun. Mark Millar, oh my God, he said I had 15 minutes, and we ended up talking for 2 hours.
Oh, you can't stop him from talking.
Oh,
I mean,
man.
he talked for 2 hours. It was actually 5 hours of talking. Mark squeezes it all in.
I know. It was such a pleasure. Walt Simonson was great, but I had a few people.
Another one. You don't mind talking either.
Oh, it's funny. When I started talking, he fell asleep. I'm not even joking.
Wow.
He nodded off. I was like, okay, I know not to talk when Walt's talking. But a few guys, I got to meet him, and, like, they blocked me on Twitter, like, after the conversation.
Wow.
So there you go.
Jeez.
Yeah, it was an Archie Goodwin. Memories are fun. And since the car accident, I'm remembering the wrong thing. So
it wasn't Archie. Archie stayed enthusiastic till the end.
Yeah, so it was
when we would be in, like, long meetings, story meetings, and we're all getting tired, and the coffee's gone, and we're just hungry, and we just want to leave. Archie was still full of pep. He was still the one. He was the cheerleader. Like, no, we can. This is cool. We can do this. This is great.
Was he still around in 2010? No, so
definitely not.
I'm misremembering.
He passed away. I'm gonna say 98.
Yeah, so 98. I was an electrician. I was still a school teacher back then. Archie Goodwin. Nobody says anything bad about Archie Goodwin.
No, I've never heard it. I think I'd kill someone who said something bad about Archie.
There you go.
They would be making it up anyway.
Now I gotta go. I'm gonna go through all the old news articles to find out who it was. I'll remember the name when I see it.
Ralph Macchio would be my guess. He'd be the only old timer that was left there at that point.
Maybe it was. I was lucky enough to meet. I met Walt Simonson. Met John Byrne. He was nice as nice could be. And it's funny because he used to be the grouchiest guy in comic books, and now you see the grouchiest guys in comic books are literally calling everybody Nazis and F you and stuff like. John Byrne is the nicest guy compared to now,
Yeah, things have gotten bad when John Byrne is the nicest guy.
Yeah.
I like John Byrne, but he can be a prickly pear.
Yes, yeah. And I still, every 3 months, I send an email. Would you like to come on my channel? I have yet to get a response, but that
I used to ask for him. I used to tell the guys at DC, who do you want to have draw this? Ask John Byrne. Every time, ask John Byrne. I want to write a story for John Byrne, and he would always politely decline.
I'd like to think that he doesn't need to work, So,
well, I wanted to work.
You got working on now. You got the movie coming out, and you said that you don't go to the sets. You don't, like, you're not.
I guess if I requested, I guess I could go, but I just had no interest. I know making movies is boring if you're not actually making the movie. You're just watching them make a movie. It's like watching somebody paint a wall, only worse.
It's like It's like watching a construction site. This guy's walking around laying stuff down. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but even then, it's really even worse because imagine watching somebody paint a wall, and every 5 minutes they walk away, and come back 30 minutes later and do a little bit more, because that's how they make movies. Make a little bit at a time, lots of downtime in between. Really no interest. I saw a DVD extra one time of it was J. Michael Straczynski on the set of the Clint Eastwood movie The Changeling, because he wrote the screenplay, and it just looked like you could tell even in this DVD extra they don't want him around. I don't think Clint looked at him once. I mean, it's just like, we wish you weren't here. This is a great inconvenience to it. We're trying to make a freaking movie, and here you are with a camera crew. And I thought, I don't want to be that guy. I want to be that guy. I had 2 Academy Award-winning screenwriters working on the movie. They don't need me.
I went to Peter David gave us a speech about comics in my local public library, and I forget what movie, a low budget movie. He wrote the script, and he said he went there and he goes, all I did was get in people's way. You know, and everybody was too polite to tell me get the F off the stage. You know, he goes, I stand over here. Next thing you know, there's a couple of grips coming over like, sir, can you know, we got to, he goes, so all I did was get into people's way, and I'm not into that anymore. Like, he goes, what do you think? You're going to get high fives? You're going to get celebrated? Oh, look, this is the guy. Because of him, we're all working. Let's all give him. He goes, no, they don't care.
No, and especially that you're the writer. I mean, come on.
Well, not even that. You're the comic book writer. You're not, you know.
Oh, you are just worse than trash. I mean, have you ever seen the movie Barton Fink? When,
yes.
He's asking the producer, you know, I need help, you know, and he says, well, talk to another writer. There's writers. Where do I find one of them? He goes, throw a rock around here, you're going to hit a writer. And he goes, and when you do, Fink, throw it hard.
My favorite line in that movie is just like, you think you're the only, he's talking to Barton Fink. He goes, you think you're the only one who can give me that Barton Fink feeling? I can get on the phone and get 20 guys to give me that Barton Fink feeling. Like, so contemptuous of the right. And you bring up a good point. Like, these Marvel.
Wait. My favorite line in that movie is the William Faulkner character, and he says, I just like making things up.
What was the guy from Frasier? Frasier's dad.
John Mahoney.
Yeah, he is so good in that movie. You know, and he opens the door and he's drunk, laying on the floor, screaming. I love the Coen brothers. They're one of the only teams of filmmakers that'll get me out of my seat to go into the movie theater.
Yeah, same here. Here.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I haven't gotten a Barton Fink feeling from a movie in a long time.
Yeah.
I got two questions now to ask you. Nobody's going to the movies anymore. Like, nobody's buying comic books. Nobody's buying movies. Like, everybody's saying like COVID got people used to. I don't even think it's COVID. I think I got like a 75-inch screen over there with great graphics and great sound. Do I really want to go to the movies and pay? It's just my wife and I don't have kids. It's because we're slobs. I get the Bavarian pretzel that's this freaking big. I get a soda like this. I'm like a little kid in a high chair looking over my stuff. And it's $100 to go to the movies, you know. Or I wait 3 weeks and it's on TV.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't been to the movies.
Steve on Cade, guys. The people watching this.
Yeah. Go see that. Yeah. It's you know, I guess like you said, COVID got us out of so many habits. You know, it's like, well, I don't want to do that again. You know, and we see some movies do really well, but you know, of course, you know, the quality of the movies went downhill. You know, there's nothing really earth-shattering you need to see.
Well, I don't know about you, but I want to see like a Godzilla movie, like an Avengers movie. I'll see the movies, a blockbuster, but I don't want to see like Amadeus in a movie theater. Like a drama, it's not worth seeing in a movie. You know, like, oh look, this Chuck Dixon meets you know, I don't know, some famous actress and they fall in love. That's a stay-at-home movie. And
right. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I was an avid moviegoer. I have been all my life. And,
me too. I love going to the movies.
I haven't been to the movies in over 10 years. I haven't been in the theater. So
I'm trying to think. The last movie we went to, my wife got into that show, The Chosen, and they showed like a season in the movie theater, you know.
Oh.
And that was all religious people crying and, you know.
Yeah.
And so, you know, that but that was a special occasion. But there's nothing worth seeing in the movies. My point. It's a shame. They need to bring it back. And what was the last comedy that got anybody off their butts to go to the movies and see?
Well, that you know, that's the thing. I mean, you can tell certain bellwethers in the entertainment business, and comedies are one of them. It's all the major studios are so far in debt. It's like Amazon's the only one that has any money. All the major studios are billions of dollars in debt, and so they're making horror movies.
Yeah, that's
horror movies earn. They're all making horror movies, and they're starting to make mid-budget action films like the Lee Von Cade movie. And I keep saying, when you see the mid-budget comedy come back, then you realize that then you know they've figured it out. You know how to get people back in the theaters.
Yeah, I my wife and I, we would that was our thing. Saturday night, we'd go to the movies together, and then we'd go to a late dinner. You know, it was date night, A date night at the
Yeah.
movies, a lot of fun. And we still say that. Is there anything worth seeing? No. It's not like we don't want to go to the movies. We still
Right.
want it. There's nothing worth it.
Right.
In fact, I said I had two questions. The second question is, I was joking about them hating the comic book writers, but I look at all the Marvel movies, and these were billion-dollar movies, and then some guy changes a character that was made by Steve Ditko or made by you or made by, and I always think of how arrogant that you know better. You know better than Jack Kirby. You know better than Stan Lee. Don't you realize just how many years of flopped movies before they realize let's stick to the one that we dance with, the one that brought you.
Yeah, because I mean, you can draw a line from when they stopped using the source material and started making up stuff on their own, and you just see the movie attendance, just go down from that point. And it's like, yeah, you got to go back to the source material. And I saw people, the MCU, producers and writers saying, "Well, we used all those good stories." It's like, no, you didn't.
No, you didn't.
Where's the fourth sleeper story from Captain America? Where's Mangog? Where's the search for Galactus? Where's those awesome Nick Fury stories? There's so much you didn't do, and that you're not even aware of. You don't seem to care about.
Right? Yeah, because they got casuals that just read maybe a trade paperback, but
if they read that. I mean, and we know now from interviews that they actively encourage the creators not to look at the comics.
Yeah, unbelievable.
Just build off the movies.
I'm like a Tolkien freak. I love Tolkien. So I was all excited for the Rings of Power. I was like, oh, they're going to talk about the First Age. There's so many good stories in the first. I think I lasted. I'm not even joking. Like 3/4 of one episode. And I was just like, these arrogant people think they know better than Tolkien. What has any of these people that involved Rings of Power? What have they done that amounts to 1/100th of Tolkien? And how arrogant?
People ask me. I mean, I write in a lot of different genres. And well, you've never written fantasy. Tolkien wrote it. I mean, it's the last word. Why would I try to play in his sandbox?
There we go. Master Kobo says we need the Commie Crusher version.
Oh,
of the
you know that.
How awesome would that be?
I want to. Graham and I have proposed that a bunch of times at Marvel. Let's go back and do the '50s Cap, who was different than Steve Rogers, and show that he was right, because they did all those stories where he was like some deluded old madman finding communists under the sofa cushions when they weren't there. And it's like, no, they were there.
They were there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't want to. I was going to say something, then I realized I shouldn't say it. But that would be a great. Like, he's an old man now.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that guy had super soldier serum or whatever, but he's an old man now, and they ask him to come back because we need. How did you figure out where all these dirty commies are?
Right.
Oh my God, you would. I could just see like a whole staff of Marvel kids just like having aneurysms.
We almost caused aneurysms each time Graham and I pitched it. So,
oh my.
The looks on their faces were like, whoa.
I remember I almost killed a teacher. Back when I was a teacher. I was, believe it or not, the only conservative teacher in a public school.
Really? That's shocking.
And he was just like, yeah, man, he was a hippie. He was a nice guy. But I just couldn't take the self-righteous anymore. And he was just like, man, we stopped the war. We ended Vietnam. And I was like, yeah, you did. You ended Vietnam. The president. I said, but if you want credit for ending the war, you need to take credit for the mass murders and genocide that happened as a result of us leaving.
Right.
And he was like, huh? I go, I always forget the name of the people, but the mountain people of Vietnam were slaughtered to a man.
Oh, the Montagnards.
The Montagnard. Yeah, I knew you would know. I knew you would know. And he just looked at, I said, see, you don't even realize that we were fighting people who committed genocide, right? Yeah. But maybe we weren't the bad guys.
Right.
And oh my God, never talk to that teacher again. But I think I got 3 more months in that job.
Well, that's the thing about communists. They don't realize things, even though things were bad before, like the Russian Revolution or the Chinese Revolution, they weren't as bad as what happened after the communists took over.
I had a physics professor in high school, Mr. Ordulak. What a great name. It's the name of a man. Mr. Ordulak. Mr. Ordulak was from Russia, and he was from East Berlin. And he says, with his great Bela Lugosi accent that I cannot copy, he goes, John, I lived under the Nazis and I lived under the communists, and I would rather live under the Nazis. And this was high school. This was shocking to me, and he proceeded to explain why. And it was one of the most eye-opening. I had two eye-opening conversations that I had a partner. His name was Boris, and I can't for the life of me remember his last name. And he came to the United States in 1987. And he was quiet. He never talked. Everybody would call him a dirty commie. You know what I mean? And he just smiled and laughed, hard work and quiet. And an apprentice was talking about, we should be communist. America should be communist. And he just stood up and gave a lecture about his personal history under. Oh. His first words that he spoke that I remember was, communism turns your mother into a whore. And then he proceeded to give a speech that I'm not going to repeat because I'll get kicked off of YouTube, of why that became true. And he goes, and that happened to everybody's mother in communism. He goes, you should get down on the ground and kiss capitalism, kiss the United States. Because as far as I know, your mother's not a whore. And then he sat down and never spoke again. And we were like, oh, man. Wow. So anyway, how's comic books? you got any new stuff you want to talk about? I'm looking.
Well, I got this series I'm doing for Archaven called Something Big, and we did it on the web, and now it's available in paperback. And I think the first 3 volumes, it's 4 volumes of like oversized, like I'm looking around to see if I can reach one, like European album size comics.
Oh, cool. Well, it fits. It's big. There you go.
Yeah, it's on Amazon. So there's 4 volumes, and they're all, if 3 isn't out already, it's coming soon, and we just put 4 to bed at the printers. So.
Oh, cool. And so this is number 1 of 4.
Yeah, oh. And it's like 50 pages, and it's a large, like, European album size comic.
Oh, cool. It's only
hard covers.
Again,
and, me and Frank Fosco, and it's an alien invasion story. The premise is that aliens invaded Earth, conquered it. Now it's 30 years later, and the human race is basically living like rodents while these aliens strip mine the whole planet. And this old guy out in Reno, Nevada, he realizes that when they're mining the planet, they're uncovering a lot of gold. And so he wants to put together a crew and have one last heist because he's a criminal. And so they're going to raid an alien hive for a fortune in gold. And that's the premise of the story.
Oh, a heist mixed with crime. That is awesome.
Yeah, a heist mixed with a sci-fi genre. And there's all kinds of surprises. And typical heist story, there's all kinds of setbacks and problems as they try to pull this off. But it was a lot of fun to work on. And Frank was awesome to work. Frank's such an incredible storyteller.
There you go. You just got a sale again. Chuck Dixon Strikes Again. I got off easy. It's usually $20 every time I talk to Chuck.
Yeah. There you go. It's, I think, $11. You're good.
Yeah, so. Yeah. There we go. Buy it now. All right. That is awesome. I never, as a kid, would touch a crime comic. I was only into sci-fi, and I realized as a kid, like, TV did war really well. The comic books did superheroes and sci-fi because before Star Wars, nobody else really, in my mind, could do it, all that special effects like Jack Kirby stuff. But now, man, I would love it if you did a war series, Rock or something like that.
Yeah, I'd eat that up. Because I mean, for when I was a kid, I liked superheroes. I liked them a lot, obviously. But my favorites were DC's war comics.
Another thing that you said, that the DC's Westerns and war comics were some of the best comics ever written. So I said, I got to take this guy. If Chuck Dixon says it about comics, I'm going to take you as an authority. I started getting All-Star Western and Jonah Hex from the 70s. Those Michael Fleischer Jonah Hexes are outstanding. I'm not, and all I could think of is at the same time, Wonder Woman's over here, like lassoing like a pink ghost that's kidnapping some goofy, you know what I mean? And then over here, Jonah Hex is stopping Indians from eating prisoners. And I'm like, how is this the same company? The same month? It is so bizarre, Because
in that period, Jonah Hex was their #1 selling title.
Oh, man. Yeah. It is
and then over on the war side, you had Russ Heath, Joe Kubert, John Severin, George Evans. I mean, they're just kicking ass. And he's really grown up, really hyper realistic war stories done in a Comics Code comic. And very emotional, tons of heart, and the storytelling and draftsmanship on these stories is just amazing. There's not a better comic book produced in the United States than the DC Comics in that period in those genres.
So good. I wouldn't touch them with the 10-foot pole because if they didn't shoot laser beams or throw tanks, I wasn't
or fly or whatever. Yeah,
they are so good. Somebody just asked me who made better comics, Frank Rock or Sergeant Fury, and I had to say I think Frank Rock was a better war comic.
Yeah. It was more realistic. Fury was like a pastiche of war movies, like 1940s war movies, which is unusual because Kirby co-created it or created it with Stan Lee helping him, and Kirby had seen real action. He was at the Battle of the Bulge.
Yeah, didn't he get a Purple Heart too?
I believe so, but he was in the thick of it. He saw a lot of horrible stuff, but I guess he decided he didn't want to do a grim and gritty war story.
Yeah, and I love too when I meet up a kid who just got into comic books 3 years ago, telling me that Jack Kirby would have been on his side, at the Antifa rallies and stuff like that. Jack Kirby punched Nazis. I'm like, oh, you're claiming World War II veterans? These guys hated commies.
They hated commies. They hated Nazis. They hated anybody that was trying to tell them what to do. I talked to a World War II vet years ago, and he said, I'm looking at the way our country's going, and he goes, in a few years, the liberals will be wearing the jackboots. I'm like, okay. Yeah. He saw the same signs that they were seeing over there. But, when you got people in masks with symbols and stuff running around in the streets, it's like, okay, we've seen this before. We know how this movie ends.
I always quote George Carlin, and I totally agree when he says, I love people. I love the individual. He goes, I could sit down next to anybody on an airplane and have a conversation. That's why I like what I'm doing now, you and me. And I'll be a guest on somebody else's channel, and there's 20 people, and I turn into Cindy Brady. But like one-on-one, I love. But groups of people get scary to me. And George Carlin goes, that's when they start forming slogans and hats and making stickers and marching in order.
And pointing over at those people. We don't like those people.
Yeah. Marky says Kirby almost lost his feet in Battle of the Bulge.
Well, yeah, so many of them did. So many of them almost, it was cold. I've talked to a lot of Bulge vets, and God, more miserable conditions you can't imagine.
So, when I think of you always have like realistic cops and the Punisher stuff. Any ideas for like war comics coming out? Is there a market for that? Or
I think there would be. They still have them in England. They still sell. They're still in order. The problem is reaching the audience. Yeah. How do you reach that audience? But I think there would be an interest in it.
And I remember you said you would love to do it, but you think Garth Ennis has the market cornered? You wouldn't.
Well, no, that's at DC. A new editor took over, and he was going to bring the war titles back. And my Batman editors knew I loved the war titles. He said, yeah, go talk to him. And I went and talked to him, and he says, no, only Garth Ennis is allowed to write DC war comics. I'm like, okay, which I know wasn't coming from Garth. I think Garth would have loved to have had me writing war comics.
Yeah, I think Garth he's a comic book fan. He would have loved reading your comic books. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I have all respect for Garth. He's as into it as I am. Right. I love it. I buy all of his stuff he writes in the UK, all of his war stuff.
Yeah. He's still quietly he's releasing war comics that I still get. I've been looking at your links that you sent me, and you have you've been working for the Rippaverse here, and you got I got Alpha Core. I obviously didn't get this one yet, and Horseman. I didn't get the Horseman yet, but my buddy Mike, who is a freak for your Punisher stuff, and he goes, John, it scratches my vigilante itch.
Well, scratch my vigilante itch too. So
yeah, so I got to pick up the Horseman, and you got this. It's not on the screen. Oh, there we go. The Great War of Separation. I wanted people to see the title. So, all right, he's selling 7,000 copies. Before it's released. Yeah.
And it's it's not a pamphlet comic. It's 50 some pages. It's a 4-issue miniseries is what it's going to work out to be. So this is the first issue.
I'm unfortunately I'm not as are up to date on all the Rippaverse comics, what's the premise of this? This is the prehistory of the published story.
Yeah, we go back a generation, and a lot of a lot of the Rippaverse characters, they're archetypes. There's a Superman type and a this type and a that type. And comic book readers, they're not, they're like, well, where'd they come from? They're enjoying them because they're archetypes, and we've made the stories engaging enough. But it's like, where these guys come from? And so this kind of explains that. And the situation, Rippaverse is very much a separate universe from our own, and the history of it is separate. And this tells the story of how Texas became a free nation.
Okay.
And it gives the origin stories of a lot of the characters that have already appeared. So
you said
it's the mysteries and the histories of the Rippaverse.
Okay, cool. I like what you said, the archetypes. Now, I think when I'm a rookie. I'm a rookie comic book writer. I have a comic book, Heroic Tales. The patriarch. He's a father, a superhero, a loving husband, and everything like that. But I'll be the first to admit he's an archetype Superman type of character.
Sure.
Is there any going around that? Like I find that with superheroes, you're playing with archetypes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I also.
Yeah. I mean, it's it is what it is. I mean, when we were working on Alpha Core, Joe Bennett and I were talking back and forth. My artist, we were talking back and forth, and he said, "You know what the Rippaverse needs? It needs a guy with no superpowers who's a vigilante like Batman or Punisher." And I'm like, okay, let me spin the wheels on that. And I'm like, well, I've written a lot of Batman and Punisher. I don't want to make him like that, but he's going to be that type, And
Right.
So I wrote him different enough from those characters that I'm happy that he's a unique creation, even though he sort of fits that role within the universe. And then when we were working on the Horsemen, I said, you know what they need? They need a cosmic character. They need an Adam Warlock, a Silver Surfer, a Green Lantern.
Oh my God.
And so we created Zalen, which
this is the first time you have a cosmic character coming.
Yeah.
I know you could write anything, but I'm trying to, you're more known for more grounded characters. Like
I think the closest I get is Alien Legion. I did Alien Legion for.
I forgot. Yes, you did Alien Legion. I forgot about that.
But this is like Nexus. Like it's insane because I mentioned it to Joe. We were back and forth emails, and I said, this is kind of what I want to do. He's kind of a mysterious guy. He's almost godlike powers. Blah 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 blah. And then I said, do you have any interest? And he sends me all of these pages he did for an unpublished comic, this cosmic comic that he was going to do that never got published. And it was like jaw drop. It was like, whoa, okay, we can go nuts now.
Oh, that is
cool.
Go
completely insane now. And he draws the opening page of this book. He has these. I said, I want. There's these aliens and they're bad guys and they're basically raping this planet for all of its water, and they're the bad guys that Zalen defeats at the beginning of the story. And I said, I want them like they're super evolved bats. And what he came back with was like, oh my God, this is so great.
Oh, that is cool. I didn't know about this. I'm really excited. I'm coming off a Jim Starlin kick. I reread all my Jim Starlin comics.
You'll love this.
Oh my God. Yeah. Adam Warlock was like, I think we all have a character that you're like, no, that's mine. You're not allowed to be a fan of his. Like Adam Warlock was my fan. I mean, he was my guy. And now I saw him in that Guardians of the Galaxy movie, and I'm like, nobody better clap. Nobody better, because that's my guy, And now that they introduced him in the movie, and now there's no interest in it. I'm like, oh man, yeah.
It was a great character. Cool. It was a great character.
Master Hobo says we know John loves his cosmic characters. Yep.
Oh yeah. Well, you got one coming. You got a new one coming. You're gonna love him. I promise you're going. Joe Bennett is just amazing. We kept adding pages because he kept blowing everything out the two-page spreads.
Cool.
Keep adding pages to it.
Good Ideas Comics says Ennis's Get Fury was solid. Yes, that has the distinction of being the most recent Marvel comic that I ever bought. Really good story. I don't know if you're sour grapes, you don't want to read any Marvel, but this is a good Fury.
I'll check it out. It's Garth. I'll check it out.
Yeah, it's really. I don't want to spoil, but it's Fury meets Frank Castle in Vietnam. What else?
Okay, yeah. Well, I gotta see that.
Patrick Daniel says for $2. I want to get a gif of that kid on the ski asking for the $2. for Better Off Dead. $2. $2. What's your advice for breaking in as a writer? Geez, I could use this advice too.
Get some money up front. If you're working for a new publisher, and you're signing a contract, say I want $100 advance when I sign the contract. And if they say no, it means they don't have any money. So, and then you want to know, do you have money and where does it come from? Because I've worked for publishers yeah, we have money. Where does it come from? My mom. Okay, goodbye. Good luck finding a writer. Yeah, make sure of that and try to keep as much rights as you can. And make sure you get royalties on the back end, because otherwise you're going to be sitting in a movie theater someday crying because like I created that and I got nothing. I mean, you can join the ranks of Marvel writers who got totally screwed.
I remember having a conversation at a convention with Gary Friedrich. He's like, yeah, right after the Ghost Rider movie came out, and he was sued by Marvel that he wasn't allowed to say it.
Yep.
So he had it on a T-shirt, and he says, "I'm not saying that I created Ghost Rider."
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Jim Starlin. You mentioned Jim Starlin. I mean, they owed Starlin a few million for that.
Oh yeah, they made $1 billion.
He didn't get it.
Yeah, they made $1 billion movie out of his character.
Oh, well, $1 billion. They made $5 billion movies with Thanos at the center of them.
Yeah,
but he didn't get what he. I don't know what he got, but he didn't get what he deserved.
Yeah, absolutely.
So always make sure you get a piece. And if they say, well, we can't give you a piece, then they're not serious either. Because I always explain, I mean, I was going to work for this Christian publishing company. They were going to publish Stories of the Saints. I'm like, I would love to write comics based on the lives of the saints. Yeah, that's some great stuff.
Oh, my God. Acts of the Apostles is the best part of the Bible.
I said, I want like something on the back end. It doesn't have to be a lot. It could be 3%, 5% of royalties.
They gave you this
off your profits. And they said, well, no, we can't afford that. So how can you not afford it? I'm not asking for money now. I'm asking for a little piece of the money you're going to make. So when you make the money, you can afford to give me a little tiny percentage. And they just said no. So I'm like, well, I'm not, I don't mind doing work for hire, but I got to have a piece of it. Oh. And I tell everybody the same thing. I mean, when I do a comic of a movie treatment, I do a lot of that. People send me a movie treatment. I write a graphic novel based on it, and they use that to help pitch the movie. And I said, look, I'm creating dialogue. I'm exploring your characters in a way they're not explored in the treatment. I'm exploring relations, everything else. I need a piece of the movie. And they always say yes.
Oh, okay. That also went in a different direction. I thought
they always say yes because it doesn't cost them anything.
Yeah.
And if they make the movie, they're swimming in money. They don't mind writing me a little check. So
and did that comic about the apostles ever come out?
Maybe, I don't know.
Oh, I was gonna say it never, because if it never came out, then yeah, they didn't have any money. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it might never come out. So.
Yeah. Oh, Matt Barr's here. I think you know Matt Barr.
I know Matt.
Yeah. The Rock and Roll Ninja starring Pedro Pascal. Not only is he going to be in Rock and Roll Ninja, he's going to play all of them simultaneously.
And they'll all have mustaches.
Yeah.
Same one.
Yeah. Oh, man. They're going to make a movie with Pedro Pascal and Zendaya. And, that's it.
And that'll be the end of cinema.
Yeah. Yeah.
Rock and Roll Ninja, by the way. Theaters all over the country.
I absolutely loved Rock and Roll Ninja. I thought when I heard about the premise, I was like, this is just insane.
Well, that's all down to Matt, man. He made that. I mean, you can write a story like that, and it can fall flat on its freaking face. And man, he just took it to the moon. He just took it to the moon. I can't imagine anybody else throwing that other than him. And of course, Richard had the crazy idea of doing it in the first place.
Yeah, so. Even Matt Barr will be played by Pedro.
Pedro will draw
Pedro Pascal.
Pedro will draw the movie comic, the movie tie-in comic.
That comic, I said to Matt, that the thing that really got me was, you could tell Matt's been on my channel a few times, and we both were New York City punk rockers around the same time. I said, the stuff on top of the buildings, the only other artist that ever did it was Frank Miller. And Frank Miller, during the Daredevil runs, nobody's around. He would go to the top of buildings and sketch all of those water towers, all that stuff, that unsexy part of Manhattan, that
right.
only construction workers and crazy artists notice, and that sold me on that. I was like, I do feel like I'm in Lower Manhattan in the 80s. Yeah, so
Oh yeah. I mean, it takes you right there. It takes you right there. Because I was giving them like hints for locations and stuff, and eventually I just said, "Look, you know all these places. This is all places you know."
So I asked Matt. I said, if you're gonna have them playing CBGBs. I said, could you just draw a little me in the crowd? You just draw me in the crowd. I don't have to be fat and I don't have to have a beard. I wasn't back then. And you're working on a sequel, right?
Yeah. I wrote the sequel. He's working on it, so
can't wait.
That was fun.
So
now him and Richard are getting ideas to do a sequel to the sequel, but they're moving up into an era of music I'm not familiar with, so I don't know.
Yeah,
I'll try to work on it, but I'm not sure I can keep up with them.
So now I got to ask: Are you a punker? Did you listen to punk back then?
Oh yeah. I love it. I mean, when I was in high school, I listened to all stuff from the 50s and early 60s. I didn't listen to what was out at the time. I was in high school in the early 70s, and I didn't like progressive rock or any of that stuff. And I continued not to like it. And then all of a sudden, new wave and punk comes along. And it's like, oh my God, 3-minute songs are back. Songs with hooks and lyrics that I can understand and care about. And I really got into it. So I remember taking my nephew up to CBGB's. It was during the day.
Oh, wow. Oh my God, Chuck, he's blowing me away.
Yeah, he just wanted to see it and go to the record stores in that neighborhood. But we were into it. Philadelphia had a 3rd Street Jazz, and in the basement it was all punk and new wave.
Oh wow!
And my nephew and I used to go there like every weekend.
Oh, so that is great. Yeah, I was, I'm trying to think. I think it was 86 was when I started going down to CBGB's. Take the Long Island Railroad, shave my head, wear the Converse sneakers. There was a special cuff that you had to fold your pants in. You had to conform. Because that's what all the nonconformists do. They all conform,
exactly.
And go down there. And I remember I drove. I took my 72 Plymouth Malibu. It had 2 doors and the thing was huge. Car. You guys don't understand cars. The thing was iron. I used to deliver pizza. If somebody I would swerve into them because I didn't get dented. They did. You know what I mean? That's how bad it was. But I remember I parked right in front of CBGB's, and I was like, now I know why you don't park in front of CBGB's. I came back, my windows was stashed, my radio was gone.
When I took my nephew there, we were kicking crack files like off the sidewalk so we didn't slip on them. So
there were
that many.
I went to the bathroom and I had to go number 2. And CBGB's is not the place that you want to put your butt down on because there's needles in the toilet.
Right.
So I had to. I didn't want to slam dance that day because there might have been problems. But I'm totally blown away that I don't know. Sometimes you see somebody's face and I make like you were a jazz guy in my mind.
No. Everybody thinks they're really eclectic with music, but I think I have a pretty crazy music taste. I mean, I like bluegrass, I like country, I like 40s vocalists and 50s vocalists. I'm a big Louis Prima and then Keely Smith fan. I like just about everything. Classical.
My father had this Louis Prima record. It just had a big close up on his face on vinyl record, and I was so embarrassed by my father's record collection. And I was like, "Look at this." That's how I'd show people. Look at what a square my dad is. So fast forward years later, I'm in college in Albuquerque. And the guys who own the punk rock record, they invite me to a party. So I'm hanging out with the cool guys, the punk rock band, the guy who owns the record store. We're having a barbecue, and this music comes on, and everybody's, dun, 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 it's. I'm like, this is great. What is this? He goes, Louis Prima. I'm like, oh wow, this is awesome. Oh wow, this. And I go to the record store the next day, and he shows me the record that I made fun of. And I buy it. And I said, I went back to my house. I'm like, I am officially my father.
You came full circle.
So now all I care about is my lawn and grilling.
And giving strangers advice.
Yeah,
I hang around Home Depot all day, going, you don't want that.
Yeah. In my neighborhood, I don't tell anybody I'm an electrician.
Oh no, you don't want to. That's like telling them you're a doctor.
Yeah, I tell them I'm an iron worker. Nobody needs iron work in their house.
They tell you to do coding. Nobody wants you to do that.
Yeah. Oh, ironwork. Oh, okay. Then you couldn't help me with this.
Or they don't know. It's sheet metal. No, they don't know.
Kids staying off the lawn. Kids don't go outside anymore.
Nah.
Even in the summertime, there's nobody in my neighborhood. There's no kids in the street.
My two kids, I got two sons, and we homeschooled them, and we didn't allow PlayStation or Xbox or any of that stuff, and so they went outside, and there was nobody outside, so they just started going door to door. You got kids? So the kids here, they have basketball under their arm, want to get down to the park, and we've had so many parents tell us, "Thank God for your kids, otherwise our kids would have never left the house."
Yeah, little chubby 12-year-olds. You know what I mean?
Like, we used to drive by the park in our development, there'd be nobody there. And then once my boys started going around the neighborhood, you go to the park, it's full of kids. So
I met one guy in college who was homeschooled, and he said when I was bored, my father got rid of the TV and homeschooled us. And he was always a little odd, but he was so interesting. And this guy just breezed through college. He was like, "This is too easy. This is too easy." And I started to realize, wow, all of these kids that are homeschooled are the top kids in the schools. And they're odd, but they're odd in a charming way that people gravitated towards them.
Yep.
So
my oldest boy went to college, and he would challenge course after course. And, it was like $500 to challenge the course, as opposed to, $4,000 to take it. And he was ace in history, English, all that stuff, because he just knew it.
So do you teach, like, you're writing? So
I was terrible. I was like, I turned into Homer Simpson, 3 flashcards, and I just lost my temper. Like, why can't you get there? And my wife was so patient, and she read so many books because one of our kids is autistic, mildly autistic, and she read, and our other kid was nonverbal. So she read so many books on how to reach them, and they both, learned to read, love to read. They're smart guys. They're both hard workers and everything else. And, but it was all her. It wasn't me. I was like, I'm going to take credit for him acing the history course, because I would talk a lot about history. If we were on like a long car drive, I would just start, my lectures.
Yeah.
And lots of laying on the living room floor playing with toy soldiers. But I had to explain who the toy soldiers were and why are they lined up like this.
Yeah, you got to give them the. I was the same way when my friends came over to play with my toys. I'm like, that's not the correct voice for that.
Yeah.
when Scott used to come over, I'd be like, "Mom, tell him I'm not home." Why? He uses the wrong voices, and that became a joke in my family. You got to use the right voices when you play with John.
Yeah, we would have gotten along great.
Now, are your kids? We've been talking. I usually do an hour, so stop me if I'm going too long. I'm having.
I'm enjoying it.
Okay, so do your kids read comics?
My oldest doesn't. He shares my love of movies, and the youngest he reads manga. He was a big Gru fan, and now it's all 2000 AD and Judge Dredd.
Oh, okay.
So he keeps up with all that stuff. But,
I was wondering if it was just like, my dad is so not cool. Like your kids.
No, I never.
Something.
I credit that I never tried to be the cool dad. I'm a geeky guy, and I just was that. But they liked it. They liked it because I would go to like speak at public schools and stuff about comics. I would get invited. Not on my own. I wouldn't just show up and start talking about comics. They would invite
that guy again. It's that guy again.
He's got a box of comics under his arm. But I would get invited, and they thought that was cool.
That must. Oh man, like hi, I'm a police officer. I keep your town safe. Hi, I write Batman, and it's like push that cop out of the way.
Well, I would bring. This is back when I was working for DC and Marvel, and I would have piles of comps. I'm like, what the hell am I going to do with all these free comics? And I would take them to school. Everybody would get a couple of comic books. Come up and grab some comics. And it was. I remember one time I spoke at a school, and it was kind of heartbreaking. I was supposed to speak to one class, and when the other classes found out about it, they all wanted to hear me. So it was one of those schools where the schoolrooms were divided by like these folding walls.
Yeah.
They folded all the walls up so all the classes could hear me. And I'm up at a blackboard, right now, and big piles of comics in front of me. And I said, come up and get some of these comics before I start talking so you'll know what I'm talking. So they're all, and they went nuts over Green Arrow. They'd never seen it, never knew anything about it, never heard of this character, and they were all crazy about Green Arrow. Like the minute they saw it, and it's heartbreaking. It's like, these kids could have been comic book readers,
right,
but they weren't. And then the one that killed me was, I was talking about writing for The Simpsons. The kid raises his hands. He's, "You wrote for The Simpsons TV show?" I said, "No, I write Simpsons comics." "There are Simpsons comics?"
Oh,
and all the kids are like, "Simpsons comics? There are Simpsons?" And I'm like, you should all know this.
No, what is?
But they're not put anywhere where you ever see them. So
my buddy came over here when I first moved in the house, and he brought his 2 little girls, and I have a stack of comics for little kids, and I gave it to him, and they were just looking at it, and he went to his mom. "What is this?" And his mom went, "It's a comic book." I mean, granted, they were young, they were like 6 or 7, but they didn't even know what a comic book was, And then they left. That's the part that got me, was when they left. They were so not interested. It was still on the table when they left.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean,
they skipped a couple of generations of readers. So I always said if carrots were marketed the way comic books are marketed, within a year people are going to go, "Remember carrots?
Yeah.
Can you still buy them?"
They still make carrots?
You have to go down to the carrot store. Where's that?
Patrick's
I don't know if you had the same experience, but you'll talk to people and they'll say, "Well, is there a comic shop near me?" And I'm like, "Yeah, there's one in the strip mall next to the Publix." I never noticed it. Of course not.
Yeah. Unfortunately, there's 3 comic book stores within walking distance to me. One of them, you go in there, there's just an old guy, and you say hello to him, and he's like, "I can't wait to retire." You're like, "Oh, geez," And then you go into the other guy, and I get so mad. The stereotype of comic book Fourth World Comics is by me. I think you've been to Fourth World Comics, or am I thinking of somebody else? But anyway, that guy is ultimate comic book guy. But the comic book store right by me, I walk in there. My buddy Mark, who comes to visit me once a year, and we do all the comic book stores, he gets a big stack of comics. He brings them to the front, and then he starts opening the Overstreet Guide. And we were like, dude, can you imagine looking up the Farmer's Index to see how much a carrot is when you finally get to the dude?
Seriously. Wow.
Patrick wants to know, what do you think is the best adaptation of a comic?
Movie
adaptation.
I think Spider-Man 2 is one. I mean, the first Spider-Man movie obviously is good, but Spider-Man 2 really seems like a Spider-Man comic. Ditko Spider-Man comic brought to life. And the other one is Kick-Ass. I love that movie.
I was just reading it last night because
I love that movie. I can watch it over and over and over again. So
yeah, I don't know what it was, but when the concept of Kick-Ass offended me, and I bought the comic because I was obsessive, and I just reread Kick-Ass for the first time, and since it came out, I was laughing. I was like, "This is so good,"
Yeah, it's so over the top and crazy.
Yeah, I think I got the humor. I got the humor.
Yeah, and it's done with affection for the genre. So
it's funny because one of the scenes that made me laugh out loud in Kick-Ass 3, they've been living in Hit Girl's secret hideout, and there's a refrigerator, there's a TV and stuff like that. Hit Girl breaks out of jail, goes to the hideout and finds them all there. And she's like, "Well, let's get the Kick-Ass mobile." And they're like, "What are you talking about?" And the Shakespeare statue that you've always seen in the background, she twists it and hits the button. And he goes, "What's the significance of that?" And she goes, "You call yourself a geek." As she's like, I was laughing so loud. Yeah, you stand outside the best shout about comics. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know some person is kind of being tongue in cheek, but you're the new Stan Lee. I think everybody needs to be Stan Lee. Everybody needs, if you're Dan Slott or Fabian Nicieza or Rob Liefeld, it's almost like you owe it to everybody to go out, because Stan Lee did it all for everybody, and everybody basked in his magnanimous love of comics and showmanship. Yeah, I know people have problems with Stan Lee, but you can't deny that anybody who did anything with comic books got something out of that guy's hard work and showmanship. And he's not here anymore. We all have to do it.
Yeah, seriously. I mean, he was the ambassador for comics. He would go on TV and talk about them, and sometimes in really unfriendly environments, and he would still talk about comics and how good they were.
Right. I mean, back in the
he sold me that it was a viable artistic medium.
Yes, we take it for granted today. Comic books, like, well, first off, if people know about comic books, like, oh yeah, I love comic books. Like at work, when I tell people I'm making a comic, they're like, oh, I love comics. They still make them. You know what I mean? And then I have to get a card made up with the QR code, because I'm like, you have to go to a website, www, and they're just like, that's too much work. So I make it easy. I give them a card, they scan it, they buy my comic, whatever. But
cool,
they all say the same thing. I love comics. Do they still make Green Lantern? Oh man, and they, we're talking tattooed guys who did time,
sure.
Guys with 6 kids, religious guys, all types of guys. They're all like, oh wow, that is so cool that you met. Oh man, and they'll talk about like that time that Batman did this, and they're all amazed that there's still a comic book world, and they all watch the Marvel movies, and yet you go to see Captain America, Winter Soldier, whatever this is, and there's no comic books in the movie theater.
No.
How is Marvel dropping the ball? When I saw Batman 89, there was toys in the movie theater. There was comic books in the movie theater.
Well, I mean, that's another bugaboo of mine is, you go to the supermarket and then on the magazine stand, there's the story of Superman, the Time Life story of Superman. And you look at them, there's the movies, there's the serials, and maybe they'll have some, image of the first story, or maybe a panel here or there, or a cover, but there's no comics in it. And it's like, why wouldn't you include at least a 10-page comic? You own DC Comics. Why wouldn't you include that? Same for Spider-Man, same for all these comic book characters. And they'll do this magazine, which will obviously sell because they keep doing them. Well, why don't you throw some comics in there? And then say, hey, you can buy this comic. To put a QR code like you did. I mean, you're a better marketer than any of them.
I just, because I looked at I'm talking about guys that could explain parallel circuitry and whatever circuitry and wire up a whole building with watts, stuff like that. But when I told them how to buy a comic book, they're just like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'll wait until it comes out. Then
right.
I give you the money, you give me I'm like, well, I kind of need you to buy it now, so I have the money to make it.
That's how it works.
Yeah,
that's crowdfunding.
Yeah. But yeah, so you got to make it as easy as possible. Master Hobo's goofing around, says Chuck prefers trains over buses.
Obviously watches my show on YouTube.
So. Yeah, it's because I was thinking the same thing. I when I moved to Albuquerque, I took the Amtrak and I spent 3 days on the train. I remember I had conversations with this old family. We sat at the dining car. They bought me lunch. I must have looked like a bum. I was a kid at the time, and they bought me, and we just talked. I remember there was a volleyball player from California, and I just finished in a pizzeria, so I was a pizza maker from New York. We were the stereotypes meeting on the train. It was so much fun. I met this chick that I'm not going to talk about because that didn't end too well. But anyway, I met a lot of things 3 days on that train. I would travel a train any day. But
oh yeah, like I said on my show, I don't care where I'm going. If it's on train, yeah, I'm going. I'll go with you. I don't care where it is. But I tell you, the first time I went by train, they sit you in the dining car. You're eating with strangers. Something we never do anymore.
Yeah,
we're sitting there. Place was packed. It was post 9/11, packed. And I sit with this guy and we're talking. And I said, my brother-in-law works for the FAA, and he told me not to fly after 9/11, so I'm taking a train to Florida, right? And the guy says, well, I'm taking a train for much the same reason. And he starts telling me his 9/11 story. And he says, he was a guy about my age. And he says, I was in Vietnam. And he says, I was a leader of a mobile unit, helicopter mobile unit. And he said, we were going to go on this big operation. And just before it, I broke my leg and I couldn't go with them. And they went on that mission and none of them survived.
Oh my God.
And he goes, the rest of my life, I thought I had that survival guilt. He goes, I should have been with them. Maybe if I was with them, they would have lived. He says, I know it's irrational, but I still thought that. And he goes, why am I here? Why did I survive? Why did God choose me? And he says, the day 9/11, those planes hit the tower. He says, I knew my daughter had a job interview that morning at the World Trade Center. And he said, I was calling her. He says, you couldn't get through. And he says, I'm sweating bullets. I'm calling her and calling her. Finally, I get through to her. And he says, I'm so overjoyed she's alive. And she says, were you there? What happened? And she said, Dad, I didn't go to the job interview. I fell down the stairs this morning and broke my leg.
Oh my God.
And that's the story. And I wouldn't have heard that if I was flying on a plane. So.
I remember there's an observation car in the train, and we go up, and me and that volleyball player, we just sit there, we get a couple of beers, and this old man just comes, and we're the only 3 people on the observation train. It is beautiful, like Texas, in the middle of nowhere, Texas.
Yeah.
Beautiful stars, like you could see the Milky Way, and we would just talk and fill, conversations I never would have, like it was, hate to say it, but it was like one of those movies where the black guy is an angel. He just came talking about, he was an old guy talking about like the way it used to be in America. It was such a great conversation. And then I'll never forget, in the middle of the conversation, this guy in a hard hat just comes up and just look, everybody okay up here? And he just had a hard hat, and he had the hair over here and a little thin mustache. And the volleyball player was stoned, and he just goes, did I just see a doozer? Remember Fraggle Rock? And we would just laugh. Oh man, like our ribs were hurting laughing. It was just, I'll never forget that 3 days on the train for the rest of my life. It was so, to the point, if I became a millionaire and I retired tomorrow, I would travel by train up and down.
I said on my channel, if I was a billionaire, I'd have my own rail car.
Yes,
that would be my vehicle of choice.
The only thing about that is then I wouldn't meet that volleyball guy.
Not true. Well, you can always go ahead, go eat a dining car.
I see. I'm thinking,
I wouldn't have my own train. I would just have my own car.
Oh, your own car. There you go.
Like Jim West, Wild West.
I never said I was smarter than Chuck Dixon. Tony Grigo, he's always asking me this or that. Who's a better villain, Misery from Airboy or Red Skull from Captain America?
Misery's so damn creepy. I'm gonna give it to Misery. What a creepy character. With this flying graveyard,
undead eternal spirit that looks like a skull. And the best part about him is he flies the air tomb.
Yeah.
What is that? A B-52 bomber? It's like this gigantic airplane.
It's an enormous plane. It's a flying graveyard, and he's so pleased with himself all the time.
And I don't like Red Skull is even like, I don't know. They progressivized him now. I may be a Nazi, but I'm not a racist kind of thing. It's like, shut up, Red Skull.
Yeah, I may be a Nazi, but I'm not racist. Well, what attracted you to the party?
Yeah,
equal pay.
Oh, see, but you're still a dirty commie, Red Skull. CJ says, I'm seeing a lot of new names. Thank you, guys. I just read Nightwing, Night in Bloodhaven, Compendium 1. Best Nightwing story ever I've ever read.
Thank you. Thank you. I had a great time with that book.
I wanted to ask you, you created Harold, right?
No, I didn't. He was there when I showed up. I think Alan Grant created him.
What a great character.
Yeah, he was there. I think it was a Denny O'Neil idea that there'd be a technological guy, a guy that fixed stuff. Because Denny shared my opinion that Batman may be the world's greatest detective, but he can't be the world's greatest mechanic and electrician and plumber and everything else. So I think it was Denny's idea, and then I think Alan created it.
Oh, okay. I always associated Harold with you. And he kind of just went into the Batcave and disappeared, like the little girl from Family Matters. He just
yes. Or the oldest son on Happy Days.
Yeah, people don't believe me when I tell them that Richie had an older brother.
Yep.
Yeah,
his name was Chuck Cunningham.
Chip Cunningham. Oh, I skipped it. You're a Batman guy. I think Chuck's fair to say he's a Batman guy. Yeah. Who was your favorite Batman actor?
I think Michael Keaton played him best. The secret to playing Batman is to play Bruce Wayne well, and Keaton was by far the best Bruce Wayne. Now, he wasn't the most physical of the actors and everything else, but he couldn't be in that stupid costume.
I remember him
turning. He pulled it off. He pulled off that, guy. He's got so much FU money, and he pulled off that sort of, without being a feat or obnoxious, just sort of, this guy's not like the rest of us, you know. And then you add to that he's Batman too. So
what do you think about this? Now I've been very vocal that I've been disappointed with every Batman movie.
Every one.
Every one of them, in the fact that they're not Batman movies, because this is a guy in armor who's getting shot in the chest. and then bludgeoning his way. Like the example I always give is Michael Keaton's Batman drops a bomb and blows up the Joker's. How many people did he kill? And then in the second movie, the machine guns come out when he's fighting the Penguin, and then even this new movie with the guy from Twilight. All I'm thinking is I'm driving home on the Long Island Expressway, and then Batman's chasing the Penguin, and oil tankers. How many people die just commuting to work? And then he gets the Penguin, and he just lets him go. And I'm like, none of these guys portrayed Batman the way I would like Batman. Do you think I'm off the mark? Or
No, you're on the mark. I mean, my biggest problem with the Batman movies, other than the 1966 one, is that Batman is never intellectually challenged. He's never really a detective.
Right.
He just sort of like the plot just sort of advances and he's drug along with it. In a lot of cases, he's not even central to the story. It's really weird. I always say my favorite Batman and Robin movie is Die Hard 3.
Yeah.
It is a Batman and Robin movie because you have the Riddler, Jeremy Irons, and they have to use their wits to defeat him. And plus their brawn and might and courage and all the rest of it. But it's the best Batman. And it's weird because I saw it the night after I saw Batman Forever, which was supposed to be a Riddler movie.
I'm sorry.
And even then, the Riddler does not intellectually challenge Batman.
Yeah. I after the Penguin one, I was like, I'm done. This isn't Batman. Like Yang says the latest Batman movie, at least he did some detective work in it.
Yeah, I didn't see it. I'm
I
sort of tired of it all.
I'm tired. Another, and again, we've been talking way too long. Whenever you want to leave, just say so.
Okay, I will. I didn't look at the clock once, so I don't know how long we talked.
Okay, good. I just don't want to take advantage of your niceness and your generosity. But one of the things about now I just lost my train of thought. That I've been saying for years that there's 4 eras of Batman, and I guess you obviously you're the man. But I always said that there was the Golden Age Batman, then there was the Silver Age Batman, and then Neil Adams kind of changed that. I always say that that was the detective Batman. So I kind of put that Neil Adams basically to include your run as the detective Batman. And now I always say that Grant Morrison made the Bat God.
Yeah.
And so my favorite is the detective Batman. Now, do you think my 4 groups of Batman is accurate? And what do you think about that in general?
I would add in a little era in the late 50s, early 60s where it was the sci-fi Batman.
Okay.
He was meeting aliens and traveling through time and stuff like that.
Yeah, going to Jupiter.
yeah. But I mean, that's accurate because Denny and Neil sort of reboot Batman back to his roots and he becomes a detective again.
Yeah,
I think that's accurate.
Okay, good. I remember when Batman '89 was being announced. I was working a summer job at the telephone company in Manhattan, AT&T, and I was all excited. I was a kid. I was like, right out of high school, I'm like, they're making a Batman movie, and I just remember all the guys like, oh, that's going to be hysterical, because they don't read comics and they're thinking of Adam West, and then even the news was like, Biff, pow, Batman movie's coming out. And then, Michael Keaton's going to be Batman. So Mr. Mom is going to be Batman, And it wasn't until Jack Nicholson was announced that people were just like, oh, okay. So I don't like the Tim Burton Batman movies. I didn't like Jack Nicholson. I thought he just telephoned it in.
Yeah.
But I will say that it was a phenomenon. And it changed the way people think about Batman. Like It
made people that weren't reading comics realize, okay, it's not Adam West. It's not meant to be silly. But I remember when when the Batman show came on, I was 11, and it debuted in January. It was mid-season replacement, and in December they started running these ads. And it was just the Batmobile roaring out of the Batcave. They would say, Batman is coming. It's like a 10-second ad. And I'm like freaking out. Batman. Oh my God, Batman's going to be on TV. This is going to be great. It's going to be awesome. So it comes on Tuesday night. And I'm laying on the living room floor watching it. My parents are doing something. And they start watching it with me. And they start laughing. And I was mortified. I was like, you told me God is dead. I mean, it's like, what? They're laughing at Batman. You can't laugh at Batman. Batman's not funny. And then I realized No, it is funny. He's acting like a total goofball on this show. And I hated the show. I wouldn't watch it.
Oh
And I
man.
remember like Batmania hit. People don't understand what things were like back then with the merchandising. Batmania hit, and it was crazy. You couldn't turn on the radio without hearing about Batman. You couldn't turn on TV without hearing T-shirts, toys, lunch bag, everything. Just boom, came out of nowhere. And I'm going into school. It's wintertime. We're hanging our coats in the coat closet. And my friend says, "Look what I got." He opens his shirt. He's got a Batman shirt on. I just saw red. And I wasn't this kind of kid. I just saw red. And I just shoved him into the closet. Shoved him on his ass. He's like, "Well, what's going on? What's going on?" "That's not Batman. That's not Batman." I had a lot invested in it.
Yeah. Oh man.
Because when I was a kid, my dad got me an old Army surplus ammo belt. My mother dyed it yellow, so it could be a utility belt. And then my dad he found at the junkyard, he found an old slide projector. And he out of masking tape, he cut out a tiny little bat and put it on the lens so I could do the bat signal.
Oh, that is cool.
Against the wall of like the neighbor's house. So
when I was a little,
that's how into it I was.
Well, I was born in '68, so Batman was already, by the time I could develop memories, it was already gone. But I remember going to school, and I could. Oh, what am I talking about? Before school, I couldn't even read. I'm like a little kid, maybe out of diapers. And Mom, what does that say? That says "pal." Mom, what does that say? Bang! I thought I was missing important stuff. I love Batman. But just like you, my mom bought me this like goldenrod long sleeve sweater, and it had a collar.
Yeah.
It had a black collar, and I'm like, this is my Captain Kirk shirt. Man, did I love Captain Kirk, the original Star Trek. So I went and got this golden duct tape, and I put it, I cut, and I made bed. It like I just wore that. It must have stunk because you know how kids are; they never take anything. And I remember going to Thanksgiving to my uncle's house, and I forgot that I still had it on. And all my cousins like, "Oh look, Captain Kirk's here," and I'm like pulling them off, But, yeah, and the way. I'm still like very protective of the original Star Trek series. My goal is to get on Graham Nolan's landing party and talk.
Oh yeah, you gotta do that.
Yeah,
do that.
Yeah. Oh man, I could forgive the bad sets because I'm taking it for granted that you're an original Star Trek fan. Are you?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Kirk forever.
Yeah, Kirk, and I say that. The new Star Trek movies, like my friends, like, yeah, they're really good. There's a lot of action. I said, that's just it. The original Star Trek was philosophy. It was discussion. Like my wife never really got into it, so we started watching old Star Trek TV shows, and it's just me and my wife talking about. And then she's like, "Oh, I never thought of that. I watched this 30 freaking years, and I never thought." And we would have like in the car talking for 2 hours about that particular episode.
Right.
Then we went to the movies, and they're decent action movies. But we never had any discussion. To me, that's the difference between Star Trek. It promotes thinking and discussion.
Well, they purposely took everything out of the Star Trek franchise that made it Star Trek, and just made them, action figures. And just
yeah. There you go. Chuck, Master Hobo wants you to be Batman, and I'll be Robin. You're into punk rock. Somebody sent me a picture of Lou Reed dressed as Robin, and was it Nick Cale from the Velvet Underground was Batman. And that's while they were in the Velvet Underground, they would go to kids' parties for pay dressed as Batman and Robin. I love that. What do you think about a couple of creators? I don't want to mention any names. I'm not here to slam any creators, but like they got screwed over by Marvel and DC. Surprise. And they wouldn't sign autographs for those comics. And I remember,
that's not right.
No. And I remember I was online and I had the appropriately signed comics. And I know the fan, he had his little girl look like Cindy Lou Who. Can you sign this for me? And the guy would have looked like a jerk if he yelled at this little girl. But he was looking at the dad like, and all I could think of is, yes, you had a problem with Marvel. And I'm probably on your side. Yes, you had, but we still love those comics, and we still love your work. So, what do you feel about that?
No, I mean, sign them. I mean, I'm old school. I don't charge for signatures. So, Jack Kirby didn't charge me, so I'm not going to charge you. I mean, we were talking about John Byrne. I remember John Byrne used to have a rubber stamp of his signature, and he would put it on reprints.
Yeah.
So, but I couldn't do that. If you want it signed, you want it signed. I mean, I remember when I first became a pro and did my first store appearances, and I'm signing comics, and people always bring a comic you didn't work on because they don't know.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, here's a Hot Wheels comic. I used to try to explain I didn't work on this, and then I don't care. Just sign it. I'll sign whatever you got. Bring me this, I'll sign it. So.
I can understand like a couple of actors, they won't sign because they know that it's just going to go on eBay and they're going to sell it for.
Well, that's a different thing.
I understand both.
I know my stuff. I mean, somebody might think it's going to be worth money on eBay, but it's not.
Oh my God! How many times? Oh, you write comic books? I have Green Lantern #1, and you're like, oh yeah, from 1993. That's 50 cents. I got guys that at least once a month. Like, oh, I got comics in my. Oh, take a picture of them. Okay. And the next day they come in, they're all excited. I'm just like, sorry, these are Chuck Dixon comics. These are worthless.
Well, I mean, we've all had this. If people find out you're interested in comics, my grandfather's collection's in the garage or this or that, and I'm at a point where I don't want to hear about it. I don't want to know about it. I don't want to hear about it. Because it's like that every comic book fan's dream of finding that, mother lode of fantastic old comics. And it's like, it never happens. I don't want to know about it. I mean, I was at a garage sale a few years ago with my son, and he was buying Legos, and I was just hanging out with him. And this guy had comics. He had comics in boxes, and they're bagged and boarded, and they're all 90s stuff you literally couldn't give away.
Yeah.
And he's got like, price guide prices on at a garage sale.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's nothing I want. I said, do you have any other comics? And he goes, oh, I got some back in the garage. I go back in the garage. There's like an old box with unbagged, unboarded comics just laying in there. They're not even stacked. They're just sort of thrown in there like trash. Complete run of Weird War.
Oh my God.
So I buy a complete run of Weird War. What do you want for these? I'll give you $20. Okay. So I go home, fill out my collection, got all the issues I was missing, put the rest up on eBay for about $600. and I told my son, I said, look, this guy didn't know anything about comics. He didn't know that he was ignoring the gold and selling the crap.
Yeah.
Because he didn't do his homework.
I always get nervous. I whisper when I tell the story, like these people. But when I was a school teacher, I worked with a woman, and she tutored a girl, and she was like, they're pack rats. The mother was a hoarder. So it was like that TV show, like you went. So this girl was like 15 years old, and she's like, they have comic books. You want to see them? I'm like, yeah. Like you said, everybody's dream. You're going to find the mother lode, but I have no expectation. So I go there. Everything Marvel put out from 1963 to 1974 in order, in near mint condition.
Wow.
Now, at this point, I didn't get paid. You get paid once a month for the New York City Board of Education. And I just got hired, so I didn't get paid for 2 months, but they forgot to put me in. So I'm in the second month of not getting paid for 3 months. I literally had $1,111. I'll never forget, to my name at this point. And I'm like, I'm good. My only bid is I need $11 for gas to get to work. So I said, I'll give you $1,000. And the girl's like, oh, okay. She played it cool. And then 2 months go by. So now it's like a week before Christmas, and I get a call. Do you want some comics? I'm like, yeah. So I go with it. She goes, these are the rules. You got to come in between these times. You got 15 minutes. Bring boxes. So you taking them out. But I didn't realize it at the time, but she didn't tell her mom. So I show up at Longboxes. It was raining, so we got garbage bags. Me and my brother come in like thieves in the night. And so now because I couldn't see everything. So I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, Mike, shut up. We fill the boxes. We drive home. I never even drove to that town ever again. Till this day, I've never drove to that town thinking that they're looking for me. But I went to my friend Larry, who runs the local comic store. He's like, John, this is like $200,000 worth of comics. Like I filled out the only Fantastic Four I was missing was number 1, 2, and 3, which I bought since. You know what I mean? But like first Daredevil, first X-Men, Spider-Man from issue 20 up. You know what I mean? Oh my God! So that was my like I said,
you did it. You lived the fantasy.
And the other story, this one aggravates me. There's a guy on the train station. He looks like the Hulk, and He loves it. So we talk about comics all the time. His brother-in-law, he goes, my brother-in-law is the worst human being on the planet. He's the biggest piece of shit, arrogant truck. He's like the stereotypical bad guy in a stock movie, in a Wall Street movie, you know. But he goes to sales when people don't pay their storage unit fees and bids on them, like it's blind bidding. Guess what this guy got? Action Comics #2, Superman number something, Detective Comics like 28, Sensation Comics #1. He put this. He got a Heritage Foundation, something like $2 million worth of comics, and he bid something like $900. And he's just like, I'm livid because he doesn't care about comics. He might as well have gotten, you know, stock bonds or gold bullion. You know what I mean?
Or Hummel figures. He didn't care. Yeah.
Product. You know, I got product, and he's just like, oh my god. He goes, he won't even let me look at them. You know, and I don't. I'm like 4 people removed, and I'm livid. You know, but somebody like me would go into my back room, and you know, I'll die in this chair. The cats will eat me, and then the people that break into the house will steal my comic books. You know. I didn't know at the time too, but I worked in the same building that Steve Ditko worked in when I was. That company had a contract, so like 3 days a week I'd be in the Marvel building. 3 days a week but I didn't know it was the Ditko building.
Wow.
You know, so I'm like, I always wondered, did I meet Ditko in the hallway? You know, like going up in an elevator. You know what I mean? I just didn't recognize him, and then about a year after I left, I found out that was so. I would go around and look to see if I could meet Ditko, and I knew he was. And I'm like, this guy could be dead in the office, and I was like getting stressed, like because I knew he just had original artwork from Spider-Man just sitting in the office. I'm like, that guy's gonna die, and the maintenance guys are gonna rip off all that art.
Well, actually, all of that artwork was at his family home in Johnstown, Pennsylvania.
Thank God. I was getting anxious just telling that story.
He would visit every Christmas and bring all of his original art with him.
Oh,
and he would also draw a special comic book story for the family that he would draw, and then he'd color in with Dr. Martin Dies. Because I know this because Dean Mulaney wrote a book about Ditko that never got published, and he visited the family, and they showed him boxes. They kept Steve's bedroom exactly the way it was before he left. And under his bed were just boxes of original artwork.
Oh my God!
He's done entire issues of Spider-Man. You know,
one of my very first conversations, I had a Kate Ironwood, I was corrected on, and you know, she didn't want to turn her camera on, and we talked about that, and she said that was like a moral dilemma between her and Dean because Steve didn't want the book,
right?
So they were like struggling with the ethics. Do we make this book knowing that Steve doesn't want it made? Right. He goes, but Steve won because there was a flood and it got destroyed and it never came out. She goes, she goes, you don't mess with Steve. The guy made Doctor Strange and he summoned the hurricane of Vishanti.
Yeah, it's true. You know, because it was all the galleys. It was ready to go to press.
Yeah.
All got destroyed. But Dean told me all these amazing freaking stories about meeting the family and getting background on Ditko and everything else because he knew I idolized Ditko.
Yeah. He was a guy that and again, whenever you want to leave, just say, okay. I feel like I'm.
Hey, we're talking about Ditko.
I know, but I hated Ditko. Oh my God! I remember I got that Micronauts annual that Ditko drew, and I bought it because I was a collector, and I just remember my friend, this freaking Ditko guy, and then he did like a couple of Spider-Man fill-ins, but at the same time, I got a digest of all of his Spider-Mans and Doctor Stranges and his Hulks. I was a kid. I didn't make the connection. It was the same. And I love those. And I've, since learned that like Steve, either he got old and he couldn't produce or he didn't want to produce or whatever, do you know anything about that?
Well, I think, he was doing it for the money. They sort of broke his heart with Spider-Man.
Yeah.
And he never really got it back again. But the thing is that I don't think the editors worked with him to try to inspire him. And some of these older guys, it would happen with, especially the best ones. You would have to do something to goose them, to make them realize, hey, I really care. I want to see your best work. I really like your stuff. I appreciate it. I want to see your best work. And because Ditko had little sparks there once in a while. I remember when Wrightson inked him on an Atlas comic.
Yeah,
and
Morlock 2000.
Morlock 2000. Man, Wrightson knew how to ink Ditko. I mean,
oh my God, it's
great.
awesome.
And you can see all the storytelling chops are still there. It's all still there, but you get lost when it's like indifferently inked or indifferently colored. Ditko really needed that embellishment to bring him out. Like Kubert. In the rare occasions when Kubert was inked by someone else, it's dead. It's dead. Everything was in those inks. That hand, all the energy was in those inks. And you really know how to bring that out. Because I remember I was working on the Nom, and Don Daly said that he was going to get Russ Heath for an issue. And he knew I was like a Russ Heath devotee. I love Russ Heath. And he said, don't get too excited because Russ is older and he's not that interested and he's just phoning it in. I said, no, I'm going to get him worked up. I said, offer him a chance to do a gray tone cover like he used to do on GI Combat. And Don did it. And Russ got worked up. And he did an awesome job on that issue. Yeah. Absolutely awesome job on that issue.
See, the Nom is another comic that I wasn't interested in. And yeah. I went and I bought a full run. Guy charged me $1 an issue, Chuck.
Yeah, well, it depends on when you bought them. I mean, I bought most of my 50s DC War comics in the 80s when they were in the dollar boxes.
Yeah,
I bought the first appearance of the Haunted Tank for $1.75. I mean, that's like a $1,500, $2,000 book.
Yeah, I just first Creature Commandos for like $4, and now,
oh yeah. With the cartoon and everything.
Yeah, you talking about signing? I think I told you the story that my coworker was next door neighbors with John Romita Sr.
Yeah.
And to him, he was just the old nice guy that lived next door to him. He's like, yeah, I think he draws. I was like, are you kidding me? I said, this is like, he was a baseball guy. I said, you live next door to like Lou Gehrig. He's like, right. Really? I was like, oh my God. So he's like, you want to meet him? I was like, are you kidding me? So we had a day that was good for all three of us. And I went to his house and I show up with Spider-Man 39, his first comic. And I'm like, will you autograph this? And I'll never forget. He takes the comic and he rolls it up in his hand, and his hands are like this to begin with. And he walks like an orangutan over, putting his hand on the desk. And I'm like, I can't yell at John Romita. I'm like, hey, don't mess up my comic. You know what I mean? So I just sat there like, and he takes out a Sharp and he opens it up and he signs like old school guys. Like he knew I wasn't
inside. Yeah.
Yeah. That if they sign on the outside, they know that you're just going to slab it, put it on eBay. But he knew, and he handed it back to me. So now John Romita Sr. is talking to me, and I'm like casually looking to see if he creased my comic.
Well, I told you I told you Tony Bedard's Jack Kirby story, right?
Sure.
Did I ever tell you that?
Okay.
Okay. Wait a minute. Tony Bedard's parents. Tony Bedard was a kid.
Yes.
Tony Bedard, great comic book writer. He was a kid, and his parents were visiting California. They were out in L.A. And he says, "Well, what do you want to do in L.A., Tony?" I want to visit Jack Kirby. Who? He explains who Jack Kirby is. Well, if you can find him, we'll visit him, right? So he finds Jack Kirby's name in the phone book, calls him, and Kirby says, "Yeah, you want to come by for lunch?" His parents drop him off at Jack Kirby's house for lunch.
Drop me off at this old man's house, Mom.
Yeah. So Roz makes them lunch, and they eat out by the pool. And they're talking, and Tony says he's just awesome. He's just awesome. He's like, your granddad. He's talking to you and telling you stuff, telling you stories. And then Tony said, look, I have some artwork. I want to be a comic book artist like you. Tony's like 11, right? And he says, can you look at my artwork? And yeah, sure. So Kirby looks at his artwork, and then he looks at Tony and he says, you know what? You'll always be a good-looking kid.
I love that. Yeah, you'll always be a good-looking kid. I love that. I know you got to duck out soon. I'll just tell a quick story. I saw this. I just looked up, got Larry Lieber's phone number. And I called him up out of the blue. I was like, let me talk to Larry. We talked on the phone for hours.
Wow.
What a nice guy. He sent me a copy of his unpublished novel. He's like, call me back in a couple of days. Lonely old man. He's like, yeah, So I told him I was going to call him back and take him out for lunch, but he doesn't want to come on the channel. He doesn't want to do, but I was just like, here's Larry Lieber, an unsung legend in comic book history. Just like, oh, I'm so glad people remembered me, like, wow. So, yeah.
Well, that's like Bo Smith. You know who Bo Smith is?
Yeah.
He got Bob Kanigher's phone number one time and called him. And he says, biggest mistake I ever made in my life, because Bob Kanigher started calling him all the time. He kept me on the phone for hours telling me the craziest stories. He said he told me all about a Justice League miniseries he wanted to write in which all of their clothes disappeared. And the mystery was how to find how were they going to get their costumes back?
Yeah. Oh man. That would be funny. That's a comic book story. You befriend an old retiring comic book guy, and now he's moving into your house.
He's attached himself to you.
Oh God, yeah. You talk to me, and I'm not going to go see Larry Lieber now. Thank you. I'm off next week. I gotta do it. I gotta get off my.
It's like, do you ever hear Mel Brooks tell his Cary Grant story?
No.
It's like early 60s. Mel Brooks got a contract to write for one of the studios. So he's in the writer's bungalows with a bunch of other writers. And he runs into Cary Grant at the commissary. Oh, Mr. Grant, I'm such a fan of yours and everything else. Well, come sit and have lunch with me, right? And when it comes time to pay the check, Cary's like, oh, I think I left my wallet in my trailer, right? And Mel's like, oh, no problem, Mr. Grant, I'll pay. And he pays for lunch. And he says, well, now every time he went to the commissary, Cary Grant was there. And never rememred his wallet. So finally it comes a day where Mel's eating a bag lunch in his trailer. and one of the writers answers the phone and says, Mel, it's Cary Grant for you. And he goes, tell him I'm not here.
Mel, I don't know if this is true or not, but Mel Brooks was telling the story. He bought a house, and it's Christmas season. I don't think he celebrates Christmas. He says, but he gets a knock on the door, and it's Harvey Korman. And he's like, what are you doing? I used to live in this house. My kids grew up in this house. Can I look at the house? And he says, Harvey Korman's walking through the house crying and everything. And then he goes, oh, that was nice. He goes, every year for 6 years, Harvey Korman till one day I was like, Harvey, but I don't know if it's true or not because they work together, but it sounds like a funny story. Harvey, knock it off. Stop coming to my house crying.
Oh, that's great.
I know you got to go. Thank you. I hope I didn't take advantage of your.
No, we're going to do this again. I enjoyed it. I love talking to you.
I enjoy it. I'm still telling people I'm your buddy.
Yeah, well, I mean, you can tell them that. I tell them I'm John Boo's buddy.
Oh, there you go. Now I'm going to need a camera to pan out my gigantic. But thanks a lot, Chuck. This is so much fun. This is the whole reason why I wanted to do this channel. Talk to people. Talk comics. Comics are supposed to be fun. I mean, the word comic means fun.
Right. So
I hate the drama. I hate the infighting. I hate all that.
Yeah. Got no use for it. That's why I'm still here. I never got involved in any of that stuff.
Absolutely smart. Yeah, absolutely. Social media, guys, if you're watching this, I got a bunch of people watching. Don't engage. Don't engage. Don't hate watch shows. Don't buy comics you don't like.
There's plenty out there to love.
And Chuck, you got a bunch of stuff coming out. You got stuff for the Rippaverse coming out. You got Levon Cade novels coming out. Is there a new Levon Cade novel coming out?
Not anytime soon. I wrote 12 of them. I'm thinking about a 13th one, but
it's got to be Halloween. I'm joking.
Yeah. I just got busy writing other stuff. So, but I will get back to the series.
You got a Conan novel coming out, right? A third Conan novel.
Yeah, Titan's going to publish the Conan novels now, so there'll be new editions of all of them.
And last time I talked to you, you have a Westerns. I'm trying to remember.
Snakehand and La Gringa, and I'm working on a third one called Gallows.
Yeah, you said that they said it was too violent.
Yeah, the publisher wouldn't publish it. They were too violent, so I ended up going to Castalia. They said, "Hey, yeah, we'll publish it."
Oh, there you go. I can't wait for that. Yeah, I got those series. I got Shrinkage. I got a lot of your novels.
Oh wow! Oh, I love Shrink. Of anything I've ever written, in prose. That's the thing I'm most proud of. And
Oh, really?
Nobody's read it.
I just liked it because it sounds so different than anything else you ever did. So I was like, I got to get this. But again, I'm finding myself talking again. I'll keep you here for another 30 minutes. So thanks a lot.
Sure.
Thanks a lot. And please do come back whenever you want.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I will be back.
All right, guys. So I'm going to hit this trailer and then we're out of here. Bye-bye, everybody.
Thanks for watching.
This is a blast.